again, I want to welcome everybody. My name is Vance Smith, as I said. I'm going to let each committee member introduce themselves. First off, before I even go through all the introductions of us, I'd like to turn it over for a minute or two to Al McCall. Al, he and Miss Jennifer have set everything up for us today. Great atmosphere, we're pretty laid back. And so I'm going to let Al welcome us here to Athens Tech.
Well, good morning. Like Mr. Chairman Smith said, my name is Alan Call. I'm Vice President for Economic Development here at Athens Technical College. We've got Stephanie Benson back here. She's Vice President for Adult Ed, and she's going to say a little bit in just a second. But on behalf of Dr. Daniel and our team here at Athens Tech, we want to welcome y'all here to the main campus of the college. We have 11 county service area. I would name them all, but I'm bound to leave off one of them. So but we go from Hart County all the way down to Wilkes County, through College County, and over to Law County, and back up to here. Of course, we include Elton County, where we're from. My folks here speak at me all the time, because I talk about Elton all the time. But our economic development division here, we're a little bit different than the rest of the college. We actually kind of a small business here within the college. We offer all the short-term training to the industry in our service area. Our mission is workforce development. We look at ourselves as training that existing workforces is out there in the industry, and sometimes into the pipeline when the credit side is the workforce pipeline with the college. This past fiscal year, we serviced nearly 200 companies, over 8,500 individuals trained, 165,000 plus training hours, and we had a revenue, we were really cost recovery down here. We had over $740,000 in revenue. We offer anything from underwater basket weaving to CPR first aid to how to service your cranes and your plants, all that kind of stuff. We've got two programs that we're pretty proud of. One, CNA, Certified Nursing Assistant, used to be on the credit side. For some reasons, it got moved over to our side to make it easier for the students to be able to get through. They didn't need all the stuff on the credit side to be a CNA. We have and this is the state telling us this, it's not us talking, this is the best CNA program in the state. We're really proud of that. We wouldn't, this and the other program I'm about to talk about, we wouldn't be able to do it without Northeast Georgia Regional Commission and their help with funding the students to be able to go through these programs. Our other program that we're real proud of, that we partner a lot with adult education on, is called Manufacture Ready. It's a 6-week, pretty much boot camp, taking individuals who are unemployed or underemployed, and a lot of times unemployable, putting them through this program, teaching them everything from they need to get gas the night before instead of the morning of, getting to work so they won't be late. They have to clock in, clock out for each class, break, lunch, everything, to try to drill in those soft skills. They also get OSHA 10 certification, forklift certification, CPR certification, so we're getting them ramped up and ready to go back out into the workforce. Like I said, I'm going to get Stephanie to talk about adult ed, but I'll talk a little bit about the credit side. We've had, this semester we've got just shy of 5,000 students. That includes students here, high school students. We've got about 1,000 dual enrollment students, and on our satellite campuses. We've got 4 divisions: life science, that's nursing and radiography and all that. We've got business and education, technology, engineering, and manufacturing, and also general education and online learning. And this semester is our 11th consecutive term of enrollment increases, which we're pretty proud of that, because in a good economy, that's hard for technical colleges to pull off, because we thrive in bad economies when people are going back to school to try to figure out what they're going to do and get retrained to go back into the workforce. That's really all I wanted to say. We've got Stephanie somewhere. She's going to talk a minute, but I would want to extend the opportunity for y'all, if you have downtime today, if y'all want to take a tour of any of the facilities we have, the welding programs open today, if y'all want to take a tour of anything that we've got, just let me know, and we can facilitate that while you're here. But I'm gonna let Stephanie talk about, her adult ed program, and because she services a lot of people too.
I'll just take a minute to tell you about our adult ed program. We have over 41,000 residents in our 11 county service area who do not have a high school diploma or a GED. So we have 3 GED centers in each county in the 11 county service area. We cover about 1,300 students a year, and what we do is we give them free adult literacy, basic education, GED classes, citizenship classes, and civics classes. So all of our services in the adult education program are free, but one of the things we did is we tried to shorten the time it takes for someone to get a credential and a GED at the same time, much like the high school dual enrollment. So we have these programs where they have sustainable wages above $13 an hour, and our programs are called Bridge to Success and College to Career. Bridge to Success is for people under 24, and College to Career is people above that age. It's to help people who are transitioning from foster care, transitioning from corrections, or SNAP eligible, or people who just need that basic education to get to a career fast. We also have mobile units. So we have a mobile welding unit. So if our students have transportation barriers, we can take training to them. And that's been a great partnership we've had with economic development. We're really excited about the progress. We have people coming out of that make $15.60 an hour. That's the average wage of that program. So we're really excited. And one last thing, because you're talking about housing, I wanted to talk about some of the support services we have. We have a food pantry, we have a professional clothes closet on campus, and we have housing partnerships where we're offering apartments to people in our program to give them that helping hand as they transition. And I'll leave some of our flyers here, but we're the best kept secret, so please help us get the word out. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to help.
Thank you. Let's give them a round of applause. I appreciate everything. Y'all, I tell you, we're blessed throughout Georgia with technical colleges, and I know everybody from their different areas can say what a great job technical schools are doing. And we appreciate all y'all do to help our communities out and improve the workforce and help individuals. That's huge right there. So thanks, Al. Thank you very much. All right, this time, if y'all would, let's just go down the road and each person introduce themselves, where they're from.
Hey, I'm Representative James Beverly from Macon, Georgia.
I'm Tom McCall. I live in Elberton, but I represent Madison, Elbert, Lincoln, Wilkes, and part of Columbia. I gotta say this.
No, go ahead.
Vance is probably one of my oldest friends up there, and the reason is the day I got sworn in, Al was 5 years old and broke his arm, and Vance is the one that got us where we had to go. So Al and Vance met up 25 years ago.
Long time ago. Thanks for dating me there, Tom. No, that's good. All right, guy.
Jason Ridley, I live over in Chatsworth and represent Chatsworth, north end of Murray County, north end of Whitfield County.
John Corbett, District 174, represent Lowndes, Eccles, Clinch, Ware, Charlton, and Camden counties, I-75 to I-95. Glad to be here working with Chairman Smith and important issue we're working on today. Thank you for what you're doing.
Appreciate y'all. No, this is good. We've heard a lot. Y'all read the news all the time. You've heard different comments, whether it's local government, state government, even federal level, talking about workforce housing. And our state does a great job, and you're going to hear from some of these great people today that help bring industry to our state and businesses to our state. And I think one of the key factors along with that, once they get here, where's their skilled workforce coming from and where the people going to live. So we're anxious to talk, to listen. We'll have a little time, try to, at the end of each segment, that you can ask a few questions to the presenters. And then we're going to try to stay on time, because at the end, we're going to finish at 2 o'clock. And at 2 o'clock, we're going to finish. So if we get through a few minutes ahead of time, we might have a 10 or 15 minute period right at the end that we can ask some more questions. You may think of something else. And you can always contact us once we leave this building. We're pretty accessible. I'll give you my card. Got my cell phone number. That's the best way to get me. Text me and call me on my cell phone. But we really appreciate y'all coming and look forward to hearing some great communication here. We're going to start out this morning. We're going to have the local, the man over in Bulldog territory, Representative Spencer Fry, come up. He and Ryan Willoughby are going to tag team on this first segment right here, so we're just gonna turn it over to y'all, and we're very casual, so
Thank you, Mr.
thanks for
Chair.
having us over here.
Appreciate it. Ryan, you wanna go ahead?
Yes, sir. Good morning, everyone. Mr. Chairman, thank you, board. Committee members, thank you so much. Again, my name is Ryan Willoughby. I'm with Habitat for Humanity. I represent our state association of Habitat. Let me ask you a question. How many of you have ever heard of Habitat for Humanity? Good, every hand goes up. That's always a good thing. So here in the state of Georgia, we have 55 what we call affiliates for Habitat for Humanity. Those affiliates are working all across every corner of the state to serve our mission. Our mission is rather simple. It's to put God's love into action by bringing people together to build homes, communities, and hope. Ultimately, we envision a world, and in our particular case, a Georgia, where everyone has a decent place to live. We've been working on that mission for well over 40 years now. In fact, we were founded here in the state of Georgia, a small farm in southwest Georgia called Koinonia, right outside of Americus. And we still have our international headquarters there in Americus, and we're working day in and day out to see to it that we're providing affordable homeownership solutions to cost-burdened families. So I want to ask you another quick question here, and Sister, forgive me if I don't want to steal anything from you, but let me ask you just one quick question. How many of you want to take a guess at how many homes Habitat has given away in the last 40 years? So 40 years of working across the entire world, how many houses do you think we've given away? Anybody want to throw out some numbers?
20,000.
20,000 houses? Any others? I see, okay, we got a couple of good answers about it. The answer is a big fat zero. Habitat for Humanity does not give away housing. It's a little bit of a trick question we do, because at the end of the day, we don't give away housing. Habitat homeowners are just that, they're homeowners. They are hardworking individuals like you and I that pay a mortgage every single month, that are paying taxes, that are paying insurance. So because of that, they obviously have to be a part of the workforce. And so this issue of workforce housing is absolutely in our wheelhouse. It's what we care about. It's the people that we serve are the members of the Georgia workforce. So I want to turn it over now to Representative Fry. He has the distinguished position of being not only a state representative, but he is also the executive director of our affiliate here in Athens, Georgia, and has been for quite some time now. They're doing some amazing work here. Representative Fry.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Let me pass these out real quick to the committee since y'all can't really see the slideshow. Thanks everybody for being here. Appreciate you coming out to see this. I know some of y'all might have seen this before. So if you did see it before, you'll know that this is my second PowerPoint presentation ever. December the 4th was my first. It blows, I think it was maybe December 5th, it's in my memory. Anyway, I just want to show you all what we advocate for is the concept of home ownership. And it's extremely important, and it's part of the continuum of care when we're looking at housing for Georgians and for anybody. It has a lot of economic power, and I'll start out. This whole idea came to me when I first got hired at Habitat. I told them I was going to work for 1 year, and they were paying me like $20,000, and I was hired as a construction manager, and that was literally 20 years ago, 2 Saturdays ago. And I had no idea that was going on or would happen. I became the licensed contractor when the state instituted the licensing for the building. Actually, Saturday I was out on a job site, and I hadn't done any real work in so long that I'm really sore, and I couldn't even button my right button because I smashed my thumb with my 20-ounce hammer that I hadn't swung in about 15 years. So I encourage y'all to participate in that, but without getting hurt. But Jackie's story, Jackie came into the office one day to pay her mortgage, and I had built Jackie's home with her, and she had some little bitty kids way back, maybe about 17 years ago. And I said, Jackie, how the kids doing? And she said, well, Spencer, they're not kids anymore. They're in college up in South Carolina playing football. And actually, one of them went to the NFL. I said, dadgum, that's awesome, Jackie. Do you think that would have happened if y'all had stayed in the place that you were living and never bought a home? She said, absolutely not. So I started thinking, there we had one person that told me that, but I could see the evidence, but we needed to gather the evidence. So we partnered with Habitat International and Habitat of Georgia and hired Georgia Tech and Kennesaw State to do an empirical data study, because we like making decisions based on data of all the Habitat homeowners in the state of Georgia. And this is some of the stuff that they came up with. So you got positive study habits. You got more confidence that they can send their kids to college. And then 43% of them started doing their own education opportunities. So now we're seeing a little bit of evidence that actually owning a home leads to better education outcomes and also better economic outcomes for the family. Now this is extremely important because this is about two of the huge issues that we all fuss about up at the Capitol, right? I mean, this is a big deal. Here's something, not in Georgia, but you look at this case study up in Brooklyn, and I'll tell you the way it was laid out. They had a housing authority, they had a high-density, low-income population of renters. Okay, that's exactly what a housing authority is. And it's a failed experiment, a failed social experiment from the 50s and the 60s. Okay, we've seen it. Everyone, I think, can agree. You don't have to do it in public. But what they did in the 70s was offer people an opportunity that if they could come up with $3,000, they could move across the street to own a home. And the $3,000 would have been a 10% down payment on a $30,000 home. So y'all remember when you entered into your first house? Probably about 100%, maybe if not 95%, of us do own a piece of property that we live in. Y'all remember the great feeling that you had when you entered your house for the first time. So here we have an opportunity for people to live across the street from each other from a high-density, low-income situation, same people, into a home ownership situation across the street. The kids looked at each other through the windows in the apartment complexes in the homes. They played in the same playgrounds. They went to the exact same schools. 30 years later, the kids that came from the places where they owned their homes are doing so much better economically and have moved on to continue higher levels of home ownership. And the majority of the families that didn't or weren't able to take advantage of that opportunity are still in the housing authority. That's an extremely important point. So making homes cost manageable, why does the government have to do that? Because as you see, what we're doing is making the whole community better. And by community, I'm talking about the state. So you look at financial security, savings accounts, better ability to pay bills, and here's a big one, 70% reduction or removal from public assistance. So isn't that what most everybody is looking for? I mean, that's something to think about. How does that work? Real quick, I'll tell you. We sell, in Athens, I'm building a 2-bedroom, 1-bath home right now. Saturday, I actually started 2 of them. That's where I was. And that will be sold for $80,000. The loan is amortized for 25 years to pre-qualified buyers. That's pretty important. We're not spec builders, so we feel the need, right? Very important. This isn't going to be like everybody needs a house housing crash 2006, 2007. This is you find the people that actually can do the work and make the payments and then build their house, okay? And that is amortized 25 years, 0 interest, and the payment is $267 a month, plus taxes and insurance. So where all this extra money comes from is their living expense. And if you're making $30,000 a year, you're paying $800 rent. That's the average for a 2-bedroom apartment here in Athens, Georgia. And then all of a sudden you got about half that money in your pocket. Well, what are you going to do? You're going to spend that money in the community. You're going to save for your kids' college. You're going to actually pay your electric bills. You're going to do everything that people need to be doing. So what we want to do, we need to lower the threshold for economic participation in wealth building. And that's going to, we've got some ideas. I'm not presenting the ideas to you. I'm just telling you the benefits and the outcomes of home ownership. Got to have public-private partnerships. Like I said, it's not on spec. So here's how we do it. And we call this the virtuous cycle of investment. So the big thing is, what's the return on the investment? And how can you quantify that data? You can't really see it too much, but basically we're looking at where do we get our funds from? Grantors, donors, board staff and volunteers, donors. We come in, we have a restore program which we sell used goods, and we have 2 in Athens, and they do great. Those funds are spent on the construction. Here in Athens, we do house construction and renovation. We actually have a handicap ramp program that we build handicap ramps on and accessibility features on owner-occupied low-income families' homes. We do have a multifamily program, but like I said before, we do not encourage high-density, low-income projects. These are spread out multifamily. The largest one is a 16-unit designation, because the data shows high-density, low-income projects are not working. They haven't worked for over 70 years now. What works is when you take opportunities for low-income families to be in a higher income area, then the outcomes are much better. We also do home repairs. It's called a Brush with Kindness, and those are also for owner-occupied low-income families. A lot of folks are living on Social Security, but they bought their houses back when it was $30,000 to buy a house, and we'll go in and do some fixing, a lot of roofs, a lot of issues with structural damages. We don't just do like paint it because you want to change your color. We do real work to the homes. What does that result in? Reduced blight, reduced public assistance. All their extra money goes into the economy. You have stability in housing, financial education, employment, and health, and it makes a more prosperous community that way. And this is real stuff. This is all data-driven information that I'm giving you. That is actually a picture of a duplex that we are currently working on that was in the neighborhood, which is right off of Broad Street. If you hang out in Athens and you're just visiting, you go up and down Millage, you go up and down Broad, you hang out at the Varsity, you never see some of this stuff. You got to take some weird turns and go back in these neighborhoods off the main areas. We try to look at the idea of if you're spending more than 30% of your income on your housing, you're called housing stressed. Okay, now you can be housing stressed and be rich, but the majority of people are housing stressed. They don't make enough money. Bad housing is a haven for crime. People are going to move out. We're having issues in our rural areas because there are no housing opportunities. There are no job opportunities. There's very little health care opportunities. And this is all part of the big picture. Georgia. Now this is third quarter 2018. I haven't checked it recently. About a year ago, lowest home ownership rate in the Southeast. Athens, lowest home ownership rate in the state. It's ground zero for home ownership here. We also have one of the highest poverty rates in Athens, Georgia, for cities that are over 100,000, and one of the largest disparities of wealth of any city in the nation, meaning we've got the richest people and the poorest people right here. Now you can see, as it relates to our rural issues, you can't really tell. That dark orange is 50% or above of your income towards your housing expense. Now, and I'm sorry you can't see this, but you see the dense urban areas, and right here around them you have that 50% or more of your income being spent on your housing. So if you make $2,000 a month, chances are you're probably spending about $1,000 just to live somewhere, and you got no money left over. So that's the general gist. I blew through that. I don't think I used my 12 minutes of my 30. But I'd like to open it up to any questions if anybody has any.
Yeah. What's the, if a person buys a house, do they have to keep it so long to keep somebody from just reselling it?
That's a great question. Thank you, Jason. What we do is, so we'll sell a home for $80,000 in that general area, I'm just gonna give you a rough figure example. In that general area, pretend the houses are being sold for about 105, right? So we sell it for 80, they all of a sudden get, what, 25,000 equity right away. We hold a second mortgage for that $25,000, where it's forgiven $1,000 a year for the length of the mortgage, okay? And so that way, that stops predatory lending, that stops anybody from flipping. Now, really more importantly is our pre-selection process is really rigid. So people I'm working with, first-time home owners, sometimes in generations of their families, they are not letting those homes go. But we do believe in wealth building through home ownership. I mean, this is the American dream. This is what I was taught since I was a little boy. I lived in trailers, apartments, military bases, but we always knew that we were going to buy our home. And the one thing that Fannie Mae Price, my grandma, told me is never sell your land, because it's the one thing that don't make more of. There's a lot of people that don't get that information. We also have what's a first right of refusal in our contract. So if a customer wants to sell a home, gets a higher education, gets a better job, needs to move somewhere, whatever, then we have the right of first refusal. Well, we will pay them their second mortgage that they lived in it, plus all their payments that they have paid, and that's their equity position. And then we will buy it back and repurpose it. I got one that's got another job, and she's going to move, I think, to somewhere near Atlanta. And so we'll buy her home back. Those houses where she's at are going for like $150 right now, but it's going to cost Habitat around $30. So she'll have her $30,000, and we'll be able to sell that home back into somebody that's pre-approved and vetted to move forward.
In the audience, anybody?
Right. Are there any rules or regulations that we as a state could possibly change that will help lower the cost of building a home where you can, build more homes that will not, at the same time, compromise the quality and safety of the home?
Yeah, and here's where we're at in the construction industry, is every single time that we make a new rule, and I've been working with my local government. I don't think we have anybody from local government here. We have one in the back from the next county over. Every time they make a new rule, it costs more to build. Specifically with Athens Park County is what I'm mostly concerned about, is we have a driveway rule. Driveway has to be a certain depth, has to go a certain place. When that rule comes in effect, they put a new driveway permit in, it's $50, okay? Then you have, if you're carrying interest on a debt and you have a long time that you have to go through the planning and zoning process, then that piles it up. As you create regulations around your roads, every road that you have to build into a piece of land that has lots around it is divided up, and that costs on that. When we have ordinances like minimum lot sizes, that's a big issue. No accessory dwellings allowed, that's a big issue. Now, I'm not here to decide when the state needs to step in, but there are several things that, depending on where you want to go, we need to figure out where those lines in the sand need to be drawn. That's a good question.
Two questions for you. One is, I know we looked at urban areas. Is there data set that I could get from you around? Because Bibb County is right smack dead in the middle of this poverty problem. And so are there any data sets you have around what happens in the urban areas?
In urban?
Yeah.
Yes, we have some. I mean, all of it, the study was a statewide study, so there were urban and rural data points that were included in that. That map is just to kind of show how around an urban area, if it's a high dense population in that urban area, that there are major house cost issues in the areas surrounding it, and for pretty much most of the state, but definitely in urban areas as well.
And just one quick tangential question is, Mr. Chairman, is when you think about like affordable or the low-income housing tax credits that are generally applied in the state in multifamily, is there a move that you're aware of? I don't know if anybody on the panel is aware of any moves that apply that 9% or 4% low-income housing tax credit to single family which will reduce the cost and so forth.
And DCA can speak to this better than I can, but I believe those are federal funds utilized for multifamily purposes only. But the state has we have a little bit of a program that encourages home ownership. Not a lot of people know about it, specific for specific trades, police, nurse, and whatnot. But it'd be great if the state of Georgia, we could figure out a way to get folks into home ownership, seeing as how it does seem to solve a lot of the social issues and a lot of the issues that we throw money at. It'd be awesome if we could take a position on that. There's examples of other states who have successfully done this, and I've got all the research that shows it. And we can get pretty innovative, and we don't have to reinvent the wheel either.
Can we mention the sales tax that we as affiliates have to pay on purchases of our construction materials?
Certainly, that's one thing. We do pay sales tax as affiliates. There's very few folks around the state that build housing. I mean, the construction industry in the state, y'all, those of y'all that are here, y'all aren't building $100,000 houses. You don't want to build a $100,000 house because you can't make the margins on it. House is like a car, you know. You add a premium stereo, then you get to put a little profit on the premium stereo. You add granite countertops, you get to put a little profit on the granite countertops. It's going to be bigger than if you just had the regular old Formica countertop. So when we're purchasing stuff, we do pay a state sales tax, and that I don't have the exact figures of what that amount could be. It could help, but it would only be a small, tiny little help relative to what other states have done to spur the concept of home ownership with their populations. It would be one thing in a package of things.
Can you give us an example of what other states have done? I mean, not here, but just to.
I'll tell you right now. Several years ago, and the idea of trying to get the state involved has come from a couple of specific states, Minnesota and Florida. I don't know if Minnesota still does, but Florida has a very aggressive tax credit program that they utilize. It's almost like the SSO and the hospital tax credit program, right? Where corporations can use labor and sponsorships of homes to offset some of their state tax burden, and so can individuals. So if you set something up like the SSO, a couple grand a pop, and then have that money pooled and direct it towards home ownership programs, that's a great example. And you have Habitat at Jacksonville at one time was building 200 houses a year.
Yes, so.
I mean, just rolling through them.
They're
Very
building-
popular program
I was gonna say, they're building well over 1,000 in the state of Florida.
a year. And so, I mean, you get the concept of a very positive corporate culture. You get people involved. It's like an old barn raising. How many of y'all have been on a Habitat site to build on a Saturday? Well, the rest of y'all need to go. Anybody else? Y'all, thank you for your, oh yeah, awesome.
You had mentioned how Habitat vets potential new homeowners to make sure they're invested and continue to be the homeowner there. Do you have trouble finding new homeowners that qualify, or do you guys have a waiting list here in Athens?
I try to keep a short waiting list because it's a long process. And so currently we finished one and I had 4 waiting. I'm starting 2 and I have 2 waiting now. And so it's just gonna depend, you know. I mean, but I had this lady come in and she said, I want to apply for a house. I said, look, we're not taking applications, but I looked at her income and her credit anyway. And I said, look, you need to fix this stuff and then you can come back. And we weren't taking applications when she came back. But I said, look, here's an individual that's working to get this. So I took her application anyway. And I said, it's going to take a minute, but she'll be getting her house started hopefully by the first of the year. And look, these are folks. Here's the key point I want you to take away from this. They work hard, they make good decisions, they just can't afford the real estate. And if you're looking at Athens, you got these little houses that were made in the 1950s that are those 3-bedroom, 1-bath brick ranches going for like $350,000. for like 1,200 or 1,300 square feet. I mean, I don't even know who can afford that stuff. That's crazy. But our customers, they just can't afford the real estate. And those are the people that we work with. They're working hard, they've got decent credit, they pay a down payment, they actually have to help build the house. And our foreclosure rate, even at the height of the downturn, was only 1 to 2% nationwide. So it's the best bang for your buck, and it'd be great to see the state get invested.
So how, in terms of where you're putting these communities, the resistance you face from neighbors and how are the politicians reacting? Because as a builder, that's our biggest challenge. Everybody recognizes this is a huge issue, but it comes down to votes. And staff loves it, because, you know, you look at all the counties in the state of Georgia, the staff can't afford to live most of the time.
That's right.
First responders can't afford a lot of times to live. And so it's an apparent issue, but it comes down to the political pressure the neighborhoods put on the politicians. So how are you seeing that?
Well, so I'm not going into a neighborhood that has super high-end homes and saying, hey, I'm going to put a 1,000 square foot home in here, right? But I think a lot of it has to do with the education that goes on about this. We had one example over in Forest Heights where there's another organization that was building homes in that neighborhood, Forest Heights. And the neighbors got all upset. What they didn't realize that the people that qualified for these houses made about as much money as the people that lived in the neighborhood. It was just that idea that it was a land trust house, that there was something wrong with it or wrong with the individuals. So you really got to pay attention to what you're doing, but we also use it as a tool to redevelop neighborhoods. So you go into neighborhoods and you put a high number of homeowners in a certain area in a short period of time, and then you have neighborhood revitalization. First off, you got no resistance, but second off, you got people who own their homes that are paying attention instead of like vast swaths of rental neighborhoods and houses that have gotten torn down. So you got to be smart about where you're going and pick your battles for sure. Y'all, I think my time is up. We got one more.
Where does the land value come in? Is it a land trust or is it fee simple, or how do you acquire the land?
So, several different ways. During the downturn, we had a lot of donations. I'm really good at, basically I'm a developer, and I have to stay one step ahead of the for-profit developers to try to locate land in areas where I feel like it's about to turn, right? And so, for example, we bought 2 4-bedroom or 4-unit quadruplexes and 16 duplexes in an area right before the market started going crazy right there. And I just try to keep my eyes on it and manage those acquisitions. We have a pretty large bank of property locally that we can work with, but I could have sold that contract 4 times to people that found out that I had the offer on it. So that's what we do. You just got to be smart about it. All right, y'all, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate that.
Thank you, appreciate it. I think you can tell, this is just my own opinion, but that's some passion right there. These guys know what they're talking about, and I know Spencer. You know, everything in life's about relationships. I didn't know Spencer till this year. In January, I met him over there at the Capitol one day, and we started talking, and great guy. So I know that other rascal. Ryan's from down in my area, down in Harris County, so glad to have 2 Harris Counties up here in Bulldog territory.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
No.
Appreciate y'all having us out.
No, this is great, and like you say, I know the board, the committee may have some more questions later on. We don't have to get hold of you, and we certainly want to get on the line too. So thank you.
Thank y'all.
Appreciate it. Okay, we're gonna keep going down the list here. We're glad next to have Sam. I'm gonna try this, Sam. I could say Sam Smith, but it's Sam Shimbaga.
That's right, perfect.
How about that? And Sam's here from the Atlanta Regional Commission. I talked to him a couple times on the telephone. Really excited that you can come be with us. The head guy, most of you know, Doug Hooker, been a good friend for a long time. And when I talked to Doug and kind of telling him about workforce housing, he just interrupted me. He said, we need to have Sam come over. So Sam and I talked, and we're really glad to have him. I'll let you do your bio over there, but.
Excellent.
All right.
Thank
Yes,
you.
sir.
Thank you for this opportunity. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. And as part of the first presentation, I was like, maybe I should ask a couple of questions to get you guys warmed up. So I'm going to do that. So how many of y'all have had a conversation about housing, any conversation around housing, not about this committee or this meeting today, but just generally about housing in the past week? Family, friends? All right. Maybe in the last couple of weeks? In the last month? All right, so that's most of us, right? And I have another set of questions, but the way we talk about housing is, at the end of the day, it's about all of us. It's not about, certain income groups or certain types of housing. It's the kind of housing that you and I, family, friends, all of us are looking for, and that's what the work that we're doing about is, and that's what the general housing affordability conversation is about. So I moved to Atlanta about a couple years ago, working for a similar organization in the Chicago region. And I'll be honest with you, one of the biggest draws to moving to the Atlanta region was housing. We're like, okay, the cost of living is relatively lower. We can afford a house, we can have a better life. The weather helped, obviously, because 6 months of snow is not ideal. But at the end of the day, when we moved here, we realized housing is not really that much cheaper. And I'll show you some of the things that I found out afterwards, but is a topic that we're discussing a lot more in our region and trying to figure out what do we do about some of these factors which are playing into this housing affordability issue that we're having in Metro Atlanta. What I wanted to do real quick was to tell you what we're already doing as the Atlanta Regional Commission. So our organization is not new to the space of housing. We have been having conversations around housing affordability, housing issues for a long time. There's 4 main ways in which we do it, working with cities and counties in the 10-county Metro Atlanta region on long-range planning. So we work with communities to try to understand, okay, what are land use and development challenges you're facing? How do we address those in the short, mid, and long term? And more, we're hearing about how housing affordability is a key component of that. One of the programs we have is called the Livable Centers Initiative, which is, as the name sort of suggests, it's about how you create these livable centers throughout Metro Atlanta. And the fundamental, conversation has moved to what does it really mean to be livable? And when we talk about livable for who? And so that has sort of gotten the topic of housing affordability to the core of that program. So we work on that through the long-range planning realm. Convening, this is something, again, we do very well, in my opinion, but again, one of the roles we play as a regional commission is we bring a diversity of folks to the table to have crucial conversations around issues that we think are significant for us to address as a region. And of course, housing affordability is one of those. So we bring the elected officials, the city and county officials, the development community, the nonprofit community, and pretty much any stakeholder there that is in some of these regional issues, the housing affordability being one of them, to come and talk about what they're facing in their individual jurisdictions, together as a sub-region, and try to figure out how do we address those. Data, we love data. We do a lot of data research. I'm not a data person, but we always lead with the data. And we like to say the good thing about data is that ultimately it's true, whether you believe it or not. So we just try to do an objective analysis of what the data says and try to go where the data is taking us. And we support a lot of organizations with that data. And lastly, again, which is another key component, I think, which was asked at the question that you'd asked about education. So there is always the question that we get a lot in our communities about Why should I care about this? Or is this really an issue for our community? Why should we care about housing affordability? What we do is we have a number of leadership programs at different levels, from elected officials, appointed officials, emerging leaders, high school students, that we sort of bring them to the table and sort of tell them some of these data points, some of the information we're hearing through our long-range planning, to try to make them more aware of some of these issues so that they're more informed as they're stepping out to their communities as well. So another thing, again, we're not in this alone. Many of you have probably seen these headlines somewhere. It's a national issue, housing affordability. Of course, some of these places much of more of a crisis. We don't want to get there, obviously, but we're very aware of this being a national conversation. Not much different in our region as well when we talk about Metro Atlanta. A lot of communities, a lot of neighborhoods starting to talk about, again, housing affordability issues as it relates to workforce. Just curious, has anyone heard about the Norcross extended stay study in this group? Fascinating case, again, and I'll take an aside here to tell you this because I find it fascinating. The community Norcross is a city of about 17,000 folks. They have about 15 extended stay motels. And they started off the conversation, and it started off by saying, there's crime issues that we're facing, we're an eyesore. What do we do to address this in our community? They did a door-to-door survey to understand, again, who's living there, what are some of the characteristics, and what they came out with was the fact that 30% of the folks living there were seniors on fixed income. 40% of the folks living there were folks who had children in their household. They were not transients. Most of them had a fixed job. They'd been staying there for upwards of a year. But their primary issue was they did not either have enough for a down payment on a home, or that they did not have enough for a deposit on a rental. So that was sort of an aha moment for the city of Norcross in terms of, okay, this is our only remaining supply of affordable housing in our community. So the conversation pivoted from, what do we do about this eyesore, to, we need to do something to stabilize this existing supply of affordable housing. And most of these folks were working in the community. And so that was a very fascinating study that we got to participate in, but that's happening all around the region. Now, like I said, affordability in Metro Atlanta, if you look at it just in terms of housing cost, we fare pretty well. We seem pretty affordable. But again, if you start breaking down the data, 31% of all households are cost burdened. So I think I heard stressed, income stressed, housing stressed. But what we say is it's pretty much the same thing. If you're spending more than 30% of your income on housing, it's more than you should be spending. And also, if you're spending more than 50% of your income on housing plus transportation, that's also, that makes you cost burden as well. Because it's not just the cost of housing at the end of the day, it's also how you get to your jobs, how you get to drop off your kids at school, and all of those things that add up to your cost of living. Our competitive advantage as a region was based on the fact that we were affordable. Now, I know this is really hard to read, but we're this line, and that's 75% of the housing stock is affordable, goes up, 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 up. It's been going up and down, but it's trending down. And essentially what that's trying to say is, if you compare it to the other metros, we're losing that competitive advantage. And that's an issue. And one of the ways we came at this whole issue of housing affordability was we come up with this regional economic competitiveness strategy, which is essentially trying to understand how do we as a region stay competitive to get the best jobs, the best talent, and so on and so forth. And one of the main findings that came out of that was, well, you need to have a stock of affordable housing for those folks that were moving into our region as well. So one of our key pillars of being a competitive region is to have an affordable housing stock for the region. This is something we call like a scissor graph. Essentially what this is saying is your rents or your housing cost, which is sort of going in the blue, and your wage growth, which is getting in the green. That's just widening. You're seeing more and more. So I think between 2011 and 2016, we saw a 10% regional average in terms of growth of income, but we saw about a 48% growth in the cost of housing. So at the end of the day, as that sort of broadens out, you're just losing that housing affordability across the spectrum. So what we did initially when we were trying to understand as a regional planning agency, okay, this is a regional issue. We're being asked by a lot of our local jurisdictions, we're being asked by a lot of stakeholders to talk about this issue, to understand this issue, and like I said, we're good with data. So we said we'll dive into the data and see what the data is telling us at the metro level. What are some of the big factors? Because one of the things which was happening as we were having these conversations throughout the region was it was coming down to, it's a complicated issue. It's just, there's just too many things. I don't know which one is the right thing, which one is the more important thing. At the end of the day, there's no silver bullet, is what we came up with as one of the answers. There's a lot of 2% issues and 2% solutions that add up to how do we resolve this. But we started to investigate what are some of the primary factors that are driving housing affordability in Metro Atlanta. So we started looking at the data and we started noticing, okay, in terms of permitting activity, that's a pre-recession, you're looking by quarter, we were building a lot of housing. Then we went through a recession, obviously, but at the end of the day, as we're coming out of it, you may think we're building a lot. We have a lot of demand. You see a lot of cranes out there, Metro Atlanta. You see a lot of activity, but if you look at the numbers, they're nowhere close to where they were pre-recession or where they should be, even in that 10-year average that we've had across the region. So simply, it was this supply and demand issue that we were seeing. We started looking at, again, a lot of data sets, and I don't expect you to read through all that data right there, but the bottom is sort of the gist of it. What we started looking at was, okay, if you're looking at rentals of about $800 a month, how many of those units are disappearing from inventory in the region? And we started looking at it, there's a county by county breakdown, but when we looked at the 10 county, back in 2011, you had about 28% of units which were affordable at $800 a month. That's down to about 21%. So again, some of those indicators are telling us that affordability is eroding. This again gets to that housing and transportation, which is critical in our region. Is again, you seem very affordable when you're looking at housing, but you start adding in transportation. We spend more on transportation costs on average than housing costs. And so if you look at it, that's the list, and it's a little hard to read, but we are 6th down that line in terms of the cost of living when you do housing and transportation. And that's like above places, which are large, like Portland, Phoenix, Sacramento. You're looking at some of the big Philadelphia, DC, Minneapolis, San Francisco. Now, those are not absolute numbers, obviously, but if you're looking at percentage of what you're making going towards housing and transportation, it's a pretty significant amount. And so, now again, diving into the data a little more, I think this is the last data set I have. And by the way, we have a lot of data behind this. So what I'm showing you is probably about 10% of some of the high-level information that we have sort of collated from all the data we have collected. But we do have a lot more information that we have developed over a course of time, which I obviously did not have the ability to present today. Again, you start looking at housing and transportation. We start looking at that cost. You start looking at employment centers, where the jobs are, and what the rents are looking around like that. Look at in employment centers, the rents are a lot higher as opposed to when you're looking at rents just in general outside of employment centers. That again tells you there's a premium to those housing that is right around those job centers we have in our region. So, all that to say, we spent a data side of this was about a year of us looking at the data and trying to understand how do we extrapolate some of these trends that we're seeing into some of those big buckets of issues that we need to start thinking about and addressing at a regional scale. Now, again, I want to preface all this by saying this is at the 10,000 foot level. We're not, looking at the local government level yet. What we're doing is trying to understand at a macro level, what are those primary issues across the board. In addition to doing the data side of it, what we have also been doing for the last year is getting as many folks as will talk to us about a housing issue in their community. So we have been, again, like I said, all the folks that I mentioned in the beginning, cities and counties, elected officials, stakeholders, housing authorities, nonprofits, financial organizations, financial institutions, the development community, just to, again, try to understand from their perspective what they're seeing in terms of issues. And all that sort of helped us create this framework for what we see as some of those key factors affecting affordability. So in my opinion, we've done the easy work, although it's taken us a year and a half, which is to understand what the issue is. I think the hard part, which we're going to be embarking on for the foreseeable future, is to understand how do we start addressing them through specific strategies. That's my very quick presentation. I have a lot more information that I can obviously share and disseminate with the group, but at this point I'm going to stop and see if there's any questions folks have.
Talking about the Norcross study.
Yes.
What's the outcome there?
So what they're doing right now is they just released the results of their survey. So they did a very, again, part of their effort was to collect the data, and after that what they've done is try to get out as much to share that data. So they have been doing that, and the follow-up to that, now this is under this umbrella program called the Georgia Initiative for Community Housing, which brings several partners to the table. Communities apply on an annual basis, and they get assistance. So what they're doing is, as part of this is, they have collected this information, they're sharing this information, and the next they're identifying a series of steps to trying to understand how they either come up with strategies to preserve that supply housing, focus more on the affordable housing issue in Norcross, but that's the next step that they're moving towards. So.
Anybody in the audience on the committee? Any?
The slide with the wage and the rent prices and the gap was widening. That one. Is that because rent just being inadvertently raised, or?
So that's where, so it got to a lot of things. When you look at, when we started understanding the data, this is the data telling us, what we understood was there's some of these things that get into the factors. So I should have talked about this a little bit perhaps. There is the 6 main factors. So there's there's not enough supply out there. What we're noticing is that as you start seeing that we're not just building enough, not just in any particular spectrum, but just across the board. We're not building enough housing. So what that does is, again, as there's a cascading effect of folks who, if there's not enough of what we call maybe luxury housing, they're going to the next strata to purchase the housing, which for them is less than 30% of their income, but that's taken away from the folks who can afford that. So there's a cascading effect to the point where there's not enough supply in general. There's the lack of preserving existing, so there is a certain amount of affordable supply that we have in the region. We're just not saving those. They're getting reduced. So either the subsidies are expiring, or whatever products we're building are at a premium price to begin with. So there's a number of these factors which get to your point of why are rents going up significantly. Financing is another key portion. You're not going to get to those either through the public sector only or through the private sector only to those rents which are going to be subsidized, which are affordable to that workforce that you have. There needs to be some partnership. There's a gap in there right now. And then the last thing again is, which we talked about, was the housing and transportation. Again, you have a lot of housing around employment centers, but those are at a premium. We don't have enough of them. So those rents are going way up, while the wages haven't kept up with those.
So could you say that instead of focusing on those metro counties for location of industry, look toward rural Georgia where there's not so much population competition for affordable housing? I mean,
Sure, so this is definitely not just a Metro Atlanta issue, right? This is definitely a statewide issue, and that we look at the data and we see that this is happening everywhere. So absolutely, I mean, in terms of where we're seeing, at least in Metro Atlanta, the jobs are, there are certain job centers that we have, and there is sort of like, at least from the trend lines, what we've seen is there is sort of more of a movement towards the core of the region in terms of where the jobs are. But to your point, it is definitely a workforce and an employment issue as well.
so maybe on the rural development, we could do some tax incentives or something, like we talked about.
To give an example, we
traffic problems too.
absolutely. So I'll give you an example. We were working in the Buckhead neighborhood in Atlanta, and they came to us and they told us, oh, we have a traffic issue. It's traffic, there's so much congestion. We have a program where we can sort of work with them to figure out transportation solutions to address some traffic. But then we started diving into the data and talking to the people. And we understood was more than 95% of the people who are living, working in Buckhead don't live in Buckhead because they can't afford to live. So they're driving in, right? So most of the jobs are in the service sector there, but all the housing that they're having, they're building at price points which do not reflect the income of the folks that are coming in there for. So there was this fundamental disconnect. Then that pivoted the whole project to move from being a traffic issue to being a housing affordability issue.
So the affordable housing kind of rolls off into a lot of other issues.
Right, absolutely. Right, that's what we're seeing, is that it's not just a housing affordability issue, they're all linked at the end of the day.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else in the audience think of anything? Like I say, unfortunately, Sam, you can contact Sam. He's not going to be around. He's got a meeting in Atlanta right after noon, after 12 o'clock. So he's going to have to scoot. But if you think of any questions, save those questions, and we'll be happy to hook you up with Sam.
And there's my information. If you'd like to email me, John?
And I'll be here for a while too.
Right.
As a affiliate of
John's in the
ARC
back
Government
there,
Affairs, so
you
you'll
can ask John those too.
funnel questions through me
I'm
as
here
well.
till noon, so.
Yeah, there you go. Here's noon. So here's kind of a little game plan to let you know. We're going to go right into the next. Just hold on a minute. I said we're going to go into the next group here in just a second, and then what we'll probably do, and there's some information on the desk back here, right at the red light up here. I think there's several eating places. We've got enough people to provide lunch for the committee and the people presenting. We're going to take about a 20, 30-minute break, and we're going to relax a few minutes. And y'all, if you want to run up there, I'll share half my sandwich with you if you want to have it. I can miss it. But no, I appreciate Sam coming. It's pretty interesting stuff, and I've read some of that article about the Buckhead area, and all the employees coming in and they go home, and the price of the rental property is so high they can't afford to stay there. So that's pretty interesting.
Mr. Chairman, you have one slide. What's the average salary that Mercedes-Benz employs when they can't afford that? You know what their average salary is?
I do not off the top of my head, but I can definitely get that for you.
That'd be interesting to see.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you another comment that was made, and some of you may have been attending. I know, Tom, you and John on the rural development, right? They're moving all around Georgia, talking about rural development. It ties right in with just a question Tom asked a while ago. Maybe in the end, we need to put all of our heads together on this committee and the rural development. We've got a good tie-in right here. Maybe there's something we can come up with and help solve some of these challenges. All right, any other questions right now? If not, if you think something in a minute, jot it down, man. Sam, thank you very much. Let's give Sam a Okay, next we have two more special guests. We have all these special guests that volunteered. They get paid the big bucks to come over here. And the next ones are Brittany Huxfall and Rope. Rope Robertson. They're going to tag team together. Now, y'all, this is kind of a special group right here. I'm gonna make this announcement. Brittany got married Saturday. She's here Monday for the workforce house. That's pretty strong right there. Well, she came because she's looking for a place to live. So maybe she come to this workforce housing committee. Maybe she can pick up a place. And I hate the rent so high, but anyway. Look, we're glad to have y'all. Brittany is with the Department of Economic Development. When I was talking to Pat Wilson, Pat goes, I know just the person you need to talk to that has all the brains, so we got Brittany here, and I tell Pat thank you. And Roach with Georgia Power, so he and I met a while back at a different function, we can't remember which one, but we're certainly glad to have y'all with us today.
We're going to pull up the presentation, just give us a minute. My fiance had one request if we were getting married in the fall, and it was to make sure that it was the UGA off weekend. So my dad even started his speech at the wedding with the UGA football program. So the Bulldogs are very important in my family. Like the chairman said, my name is Brittany Holtzclaw. I'm the division director for the Global Commerce Division at the Georgia Department of Economic Development. It's a very long title. But what we do, I have a staff of about 25 people that work with new companies looking at the state as well as existing companies, helping them to make a good business location decision on where their next expansion should be. So with new companies coming in, obviously we're competing with other states. And with expansions, we're just trying to make companies feel comfortable that their investment is good and solid within the state of Georgia. So last fiscal year was a very busy year for us. We created over 28,000 jobs within the state, totaling about $7.4 billion in investment. These numbers are a little dated, but those were our final numbers for FY18, or FY19, excuse me. This slide gives me a little bit of anxiety. I was telling Rope because we promised 419 companies that we were going to have 28,000 people trained and ready to go in the next 3 to 5 years to support their facilities, which is a huge commitment. Now, there are a lot of partners that help us meet those commitments with USG, TCSG, Quick Start, and then the local communities helping us develop programs to train our workforce to make sure that these companies have employees on day one. But it obviously keeps me up at night because we do have a workforce shortage in the Southeast, in the nation, and specifically in Georgia. So just diving in a little bit on these numbers, the majority of our project locations year in and year out are usually with our existing industry companies, and we say we like to take care of home first. We know that it's easier for a company to make a decision to grow when they're already here versus when they're out of state and they don't know us from Adam, essentially. What's concerning is this number so far trending for this year is going down, and this number is going up. We are seeing more companies announcing 0 jobs and more investment because they can't find the workforce that they need to support the processes that they have within their facility. So they're automating their processes in order to make up for that lack in workforce. So far this year, I would say from an expansion standpoint, we've had 16 expansions from July till now with 0 jobs and more investment. Last year, we had about 6 so far this year, or so far last year at this point in time. So just to educate you guys on what the site selection process is and what we go through with companies on a daily basis. I think a lot of people see the headlines in the newspapers and they think a company just calls us up and says, hey, we're coming to Georgia, and so we pop the champagne and we all celebrate. But there's actually a team of people that are working with these companies daily, helping them make these location decisions. And I would say site selection is probably not the word to use anymore because it's really the site elimination process. Every state, except maybe New York, is in the business of economic development, and they're getting more competitive and more strategic on how to recruit and retain these companies. So usually a company decides that they need to expand or relocate their business, and some drivers around this are, their customer base is changing and relocating, they're gaining market share, they're looking for a lower cost of place to do business, or they're looking for a lower cost workforce to be able to access. So they make that decision, and then they go into the initial screening process. They do not contact us during this process. This is a web-based research part of the process. They're calling companies in the state of Georgia, asking, what is it like to do business here? So we stay out of this conversation. They haven't even reached out to us at this time during the process. And then I'm going to get into this detail in a little bit. Just the next slide, hold on. This is more specific to our process. And I will say, our process in Georgia is very unique. No other state in the United States has the same economic development process that we do. And that's because we identify a single point of contact for that company looking in the state. And they can call that person and they get a whole slew of resources to help support their location decision. Other states are not set up like this. So after the company makes their initial, list of where they would like to locate or where they would like to consider a location, they communicate to us and they give us their location requirements, and we call these project parameters. So these are the parameters that are driving their location decision. That's available product, so sites and buildings, that's available infrastructure, that's low taxes, and that's also available and skilled talent. So just going back to that workforce conversation. Based off of those parameters that were given, and I'll also say that they tend to have some requirements around population base as well as proximity to interstate or a specific location supplier that they're needing to be close to. Once they hand over those parameters to us, my team then analyzes where within the state can their drivers be supported. So which communities can support this type of project. From there, we submit back to the company a list of communities and sites that they may think are an attractive location to locate. And then they usually evaluate those sites and then tell us where they would like to continue to look and evaluate. After that, we tend to invite the companies to visit with us. And we call this the dating process because it usually takes a couple of dates before we can get to the final location. So they're on the ground talking to the communities about infrastructure, workforce, utilities, sites, as well as what can the community do to help them locate and make an easier transition for their business decision. And then from there, we hope that they choose us. We end up at the end of the process negotiating incentives, and that is a package between the local community and the state. And then, like I said, we hope that it's a favorable decision for the state of Georgia. So going back to the drivers of projects, and I don't know if you guys can see the screen here, but availability of skilled labor is the #1 driver right now for locations. And this list was put together by Area Development Magazine, and they're the same magazine that ranked us #1 state in which to do business. But as a state, we're always trying to stay ahead of being competitive, and what can we do to find solutions for these drivers ahead of companies making location decisions or even evaluating us. So I'm going to turn it over to Rope, but these change yearly. I would say maybe every couple of years these rankings change, but probably over the last 3 years, skilled labor has been the #1 driver. And again, it's a shortage that's not just in Georgia, it's all over the nation.
That's great. Thank you, Brittany.
Can I ask a question, please? Is there any way you could get us a piece of paper or email or something with this this on.
It'll be done
Yes,
today.
we can do that.
Yeah, I've got,
I mean,
I've got
it
this.
would help us back home to try, and we try to explain that to the locals, but they got a different idea a lot of times on what. But that right there says a whole lot to me. And call me prejudiced, and you know I am. I think technical college system is the best thing this state has going to fill that #1 problem. And either training or retraining or working with the companies to train people like they want to train.
Sure.
And we can't do without them.
So I will
Yeah.
say, economic development is very much a partnership. It's not just one agency or one entity waving the flag for Georgia. And so our partners at USG, TCSG, Quick Start are working with us to find workforce or provide workforce solutions for these companies. So, you know, it's a daily conversation with them because not only are companies worried about their pipeline, the current pipeline, but what are we doing being creative to support the continuation of the pipeline? So the former plant manager of Kia one time made a quote. He said, "I'm not worried about the kids graduating from college. I know we can hire them. I'm worried about the first, second, third, and fourth graders who right now are impressionable and speaking to them about, you know, their future working at Kia." So, you know, these companies are going down to our elementary schools realizing that their pipeline starts, that conversation of the pipeline starts there.
Yeah, y'all take care of Kia, that's in my district. Y'all take care of Kia. I thought I'd just jump in, but yeah, talking about information, I apologize to Brian. Brian Groom is here, he's our analyst, works in the House of Representatives. He's kind of taking notes, and so if you want to get it to Brian, he can get it to everybody, and it'll make it very accessible. And he's going to try to get all these sounds, and Ryan and Spencer's presentations, we're going to get all those. So that's great. Thanks, Brooke. Thank you.
Good, thank you. I'm Brooke Roberts for Georgia Power. I've been the regional community and economic development manager in the Northeast Georgia area for 25 years, and have enjoyed working with a number of these communities to help them grow. And what I do is the reason Brittany and I are kind of together is because that's what we do every day, is they come to the communities, they're saying, they'll give me a call and say, this is the type project we have, where will it best fit? And where will we open? This is the real driver behind it. Who's open? What communities are open? So Tom, going back to what you say, we've got a lot of rural communities, but not everybody's open to receive these type of companies. Do they have the resources available? So that's where my local intelligence understands where they will fit best. Not only be able to be accepted, but also close the deal. That is important. Who can actually close the deal, bring it to fruition, and then supply exactly what they said they would. Not everybody can. Everybody promises something, but not everybody delivers. So once you burn us once, the word gets out, and you're kind of stuck that way. Let me take this a little step further, because Brittany provided you with a big view. I want to zero in on that and analyze just Northeast Georgia, but a lot of this can be compared to any of the states. You go around the state, you will see the different analysis of each region is a little different, but outside of Metro Atlanta, it's kind of pretty much the same. So first of all, I'm going to highlight these 3 points, because these have been the drivers in the communities of locating companies. They all deal with labor. The availability of labor went from number 3 to number 1 last year. Labor cost stayed at number 2, and quality of life went from number 4, went to number 6. But quality of life is really creating that sense of place, which is when you start to look at, we've been talking about millennials for years, but now we're talking about Gen Z, who just graduated this past May from the universities, and that's our first introduction of Generation Z in the workforce. And they're a little bit different from millennials. So we're starting to understand, this is the workforce coming in, what do they want? What is the product they want? Where do they want to work? A lot different than, I can say this in this room because I am one, the old white man in the room. We found a job no matter where it was, and that was it. They go to where they want to live, then they look for a job. And that's totally different. So if your rural community is not where they want to live, they're not going to be there. And if you don't have the amenities, that quality of life, you're not going to attract the younger people. And going back to what Brittany said about Kia, it's the demographic I have to show. How many people in your community are in the age between 20 and 35? That is the number they're looking for. You know why? Because that's the baby making age. And if you don't have people in there to make babies that are going to be in the first grade, so they have a workforce in the future, and you've got all these retirees, well, I can tell you, I'm in that age too, and I'm not making any more babies. I've had 7, I've done my job. But the point is, with those 7, mine, I have 7 millennials, and I understand all about it and the whole process and how it works. So let me run through, digging into a little bit deeper. These are the new and expansions. When Brittany talked about the state of Georgia and gave the big numbers, in Northeast Georgia, the state region 2 and 5, these are what, the red are the new jobs that were created. The yellow, there's so many yellow, I can't just put all the words on the screen. But essentially, the expansions, 1,212 jobs are represented there through the expansions. Brittany's absolutely correct. As I go and visit companies, they're telling me, I ask them, how are you dealing with the lack of workers? And they say, we're automating. And I walk through and they said, this used to be manned with 20 people. Now it is 0, and it's automated. The whole line is automated because we can't keep the workers. So I'm seeing that more and more. Some of our larger ones here, and I'll see if this will show up here. SK Innovator, 2,000 jobs right there in Commerce or in Jackson County, the northern part of Jackson County. That's a game changer right there for the whole region. Talked with Dwayne Dye in Hart County this morning just to confirm. He says between the new companies that have promised and the existing industries that are there, in small Hart County, 25,000 people, that's small. You understand that? 1,200 jobs they have to fill in the next 4 years. They don't have the bodies. And they're going into the high school to get them directed into that path right out of high school. But still, they only have a couple hundred people graduate every May. So it's how do we keep more and more in the process? Well, this tells you what the need is. Let me jump into a little bit more detail in this area. These are the largest industries because the government you see is large, but also take a look at this, manufacturing. That's one of the largest industries, that many jobs, retail trade, and also healthcare. The healthcare assistance, because we have so many people retiring and moving into North Georgia, the healthcare is being driven by that, not just for the people who are living here, because we have a healthcare need, but also the retirees who are moving here. Sure.
Is there a way for you to get us sort of regionally beyond North Georgia, like Middle Georgia, South Georgia, the same statistics?
Sure.
So we'd love to have that. So Brian, if you could kind of follow up with that'd be helpful.
I'll look to you to tell me how you want it broken down, and I can provide the comparable so they can take a look as they go around and look at each region. Good?
Sounds good.
So when I look at this tells me what's driving in the community. I realize retail trade, food services, accommodation. Where you have people want to live, people want to eat, you're going to have those, and they're going to shop. So that you understand. Government as a whole, that is state, federal, local, teachers, everybody included. So this is at a 2-digit level, so that's why everybody is rolled into government. And that's typically in most small communities. What's your number one employer? School board. If you start looking at every single community outside of Metro Atlanta, the school board is that's the largest employer in most everyone. With the exception maybe a couple of maybe Walmart, but for the most part, that's it. So let me drop down one more here. This is the fastest growing in Northeast Georgia. So the other was the largest. These are the ones that are the fastest growing. In other words, if we start to look in the future, what's going to be the big drivers? Healthcare and social assistance. That's the largest one. Retail trade, we understand. And then further down, you see manufacturing's further down because it's not growing as fast as some of these others because we have so many people moving into the area. Showing you projected in healthcare sector alone, this region, and I said about 25 counties is what the region is identified as when I was doing my data search. But this gives you an idea. This is the region, this is the state, and this is the nation. So you see the gap between the state and the region. This is a fast-growing area up here in the healthcare sector. And you can see the percentage from 19 to 2024. We're looking at almost a 15% increase. When we look at manufacturing in the same area, it's not as large, and you notice that it's kind of leveled off here. We're looking at, as we go forward, manufacturing's still there, but we're still higher than the state and the nation. So we have a higher percentage of manufacturers in Northeast Georgia than we do the state as a whole. Again, percentage-wise, we still see it as growing, so we still need to provide sites, the buildings, so forth to keep those, when Brittany's team calls us, we need to be prepared for them to move in. And I do personally see that's going to happen more and more. So when we look at our pipeline, the pipeline starts with the high school students and the dropouts. I don't know if I'm going to say what it is. I could find another name to, but it's people who don't finish high school. The high school and the people who don't finish, because I'm going to say another word in just a minute, but it's the same. That goes into our pipeline for the workforce that we have to attract those businesses to come and be here. But we also have the technical college and the dropouts, the graduates and the dropouts, because not everybody starts and finishes. I'm on the board of directors at North Georgia Tech in Clarksville, and this is a real issue for us. Those who start, we're trying to keep them in the school. Just getting them into school, first of all, is hard enough. Then keeping them in, because they're doing a full-time job, they've got kids, they're trying to juggle all this, and they don't know how to do it. They don't have the emotional support, family support, people who just be able to help them to make decisions. You need to go to class. You need to do your work every day. Otherwise, you're going to fail. You'll have to drop out. And then last, I'm going to say it because I deal with this. I'm on the University of North Georgia board over in Dahlonega for the business college. And this is a real issue for us, is having students who start in a 4-year process and don't finish. So and this is the problem, because when they drop out, it's not like high school. It's really not like a technical college. They've got a huge student debt. When they drop out, they're going to be making the same as a high school graduate, because basically that's what they still are. They just attended some college, but they don't have the credentialing to be able to get the job, to be able to pay back the college loan. So they come in and they don't have the disposable income to spend the money in the community because they're paying it to the student loan. So that's detrimental to the community. So I say that to say, this is the product I have to sell in Northeast Georgia and every community all over the state. This is what you have to sell. So this is where we're trying to make differences to keep people in school, get them to complete, but also think before they go in, what do they want to go in, so they actually are interested in what they're doing. You take a look at the high school. After 1 year, and I'm using this as a state of Georgia, 2012, and the reason I go back to 12 is because I wanted to show over a period of time what's going on. But it takes a long time to get the data together. After 1 year, 2012, we had 88,000 students graduate from high school. After 1 year, we had 31% were already in the workplace, 69% were enrolled in some type of post-secondary education. That could be the technical college or a university, and that could be public or private. After 5 years, the same number, this is what happened. 57% are with no post-secondary credential and they're not enrolled, and they're in the workplace. So basically, I got 60% of the people with a high school diploma that are already in the workplace after 5 years. And we've got, and some of those have debt, we have to deal with that. 16% still enrolled and 20% earn some type of credential. And there's a lot of different credentialing Al offers here at Athens Tech that you could get from a 1 year on up to a 2 year. So, and then of course that includes a 4 year degree as well. So that's our workforce. I'm just trying to break it down for you. And I said, okay, that's the state of Georgia, one of my largest counties that is going to have to supply 2,000 people for the SK Innovative battery plant. I said, what do they look like? Well, after 5 years, this is what in 2012, they had 418 students in Jackson County. There are about 75,000 people in Jackson County, so just to give you an idea. And then, so after five years, 63% didn't have a credentialing or anything. They should right out of high school. And 16% are enrolled, and 21% have earned some type of post-secondary credentialing. I use these numbers because they tell me what's going on in the labor. So when Brittany brings in, or any of her project managers come into my communities, I'm able to tell them really this is what's going on, and statistically, this is so I can back it up and say this is where people are. So this brings us to housing. Because what I'm talking about is, like Sam said, supply and demand. And this is basically it. We've got a demand that Brittany and I just told you about. We continue to grow. We continue to be that #1 state for doing business. So what's the real issue here? The real issue is not about owning a home. And I appreciate what's been said already. My issue is the gap housing. How many people, and everybody in here, I'm making an assumption, graduated from high school, right? Okay. And possibly a good percentage of the people in this room graduated from college. How many people bought a house when they graduated from high school or college? One or two. That's good. Most people don't rent a place when they graduate because they can't afford it. They don't have the money to put down. Just the same reason Sam, everything was said prior to us. We don't have the money. Well, in North Georgia, first of all, we don't have the product line. We don't have it to buy. And second of all, we don't have it to rent. So we don't have either one of those. So if you wanted to rent, we don't have it. Now, you can come here to Spencer's area in Athens, but what you're having to compete is high dollars because we don't have that. But this is what we find in the housing, and this is my issue. We got construction costs. Spencer kind of went through this since he's talked about building. This is kind of a fixed cost per se because costs have not varied that much on construction. I know I'm building a house now. I'm in the process, right in the middle of it, and I haven't seen costs go down at all for the last 15 years. Real estate costs. The real estate cost is a variable cost because, Tom, in your county, if I bought a piece of dirt, it would be different than if I bought it here in Clark County. That's a variable cost. And anywhere in the state, that's variable, even within counties. And then the last is the regulatory costs. We alluded to it. Sam talked about it. Spencer talked about it. But those are the costs that local and state governments put on developers when they build, and it doesn't produce the house per se. It is just a cost that's added to it. And Spencer went into about driveways and so forth. Those are regulatory costs. That's what adds up. And so when we talk about building a house, and I'm having to compete with Atlanta. Sorry, Sam, but I'm trying to get developers to come out of Atlanta to develop in the rural parts of Georgia, to build apartments or to build houses. This is what they tell me. And I've gone down and I feel like I was on Shark Tank, the way I had to pitch my communities, and I did use those same slides to say, there's a demand here, guys, this is demand. They said, Rope, if the project goes belly up in Atlanta, I got a 100% chance that I will not only make my money back, but I can sell it for a profit. But in rural area, I don't know. It's too much risk because I don't know. That's what we're dealing with, is the private financing to get people to come out of a given area where you can make money and to put that into rural Georgia. So that's part of what I deal with. This is the other part. It's the cost, yeah.
To that question,
Sure.
maybe part of the solution would be in rural Georgia, you have opportunity zones. Is Georgia Power, do they contemplate using unrealized capital gains to invest in some of these projects and opportunity zones that would lower the threshold? So y'all would have an equity stake in bringing that housing on. Do y'all do that? Do you have a program?
We don't per se, but the Georgia Power does not get into housing at all. What I'm personally doing is so I can help my communities grow is to try to bring housing so they can have workers, so they can attract the businesses. So that's the connection I'm doing. But this is the problem I'm having, is the community's attitude is, hey, we don't want that housing. So even if I'm able to attract the companies to come out and invest here, the communities are holding up their hands saying, no, we don't want that here. Because too many people have retired here and they got their piece of paradise and they're saying, let's lock the gate and just shut everybody else out. That's unfortunate, but that's an attitude we have. And this is really kind of the last slide I wanted to show you. And if you want to see how this is calculated, the examples at the bottom is a formula I use, but it's telling people, using the 30% rule like everybody else have, and that's what bankers still tell you, is for monthly rental, $500, this is the minimum hourly earnings and annual earnings you need to make. So if you're making $962, and people who are making hourly, they equate to this. They don't really know how much they make per year. But they're making $962, which is going to be in your retail level, then you can afford $500 a month for rent. You can't find $500 for a month. But if you jump up here to $1,000 a month, which you probably could, you could have a roommate that has the two together. So two people making $500, making $962, then they could afford it. It goes back to what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to find housing for young professionals or young people who are coming out of high school, coming out of the technical college, coming out of the four-year universities, and trying to keep them in North Georgia instead of the 90% of the graduates of the University of Georgia that leave and go to Atlanta to find work. And that's what happens. And we have a drain of all the graduates that leave UGA every time we have a graduation. They head to Atlanta, and that's documented. So how do we keep them here? That's part of our problem we're trying to deal with, is to have the housing and the jobs that we can do that with. So again, I made this available, but this is just a quick guide for you to see when we talk about the jobs that we have available here on the previous slides, and this is what it takes for what the cost is, the two do not match. So the jobs that are here, this is what it takes for the housing, then we need to do something to create that housing. Not just be able to offer it at an affordable rate, but we need to offer it, period. We don't have the inventory today. We don't have the product capacity out there. So, just to recap, Georgia will continue to be, and number one, we'll lead the nation. We're going to be definitely in the Southeast, but we are definitely the place to do business in the country. Number of jobs in manufacturing, healthcare continue to be the drivers in our area. It's not going to change. I can't see it changing at all. Workforce and talent, the main reason companies locate, and I don't see that changing, especially nationally, as I follow this same trend. We're not the only, it's not just a Southeast problem, it's a national problem. To attract the talent and the workforce for medical, manufacturing, service, professional sectors, we have to have appropriately, and that's the workforce housing, this is appropriately priced to meet what they are being paid. And then the communities who want to attract young workers need to work with developers to develop the product they want, not what the community wants to provide them. You need to listen to what that demand is. A good example, committee, that 2 years ago, Frank Norton Jr., who is, Frank is a realtor of the whole region. And Frank and I met, and we had 14 regional employers. And regional, I mean, they cover about 4 or 5 counties. So these are regional employers that sat down in his office, and we just had a box lunch, and we were just talking to them. And the whole point was about housing. And it's really about the workforce issue. And we asked the question, everybody went around and answered, And the question was, if you could hire the people today, how many people could you hire that you can't get hold of right now? So this is like a pent-up demand. And this was the school superintendent, this was the Northeast Georgia Health Systems that covers a large part of North Georgia. Manufacturers, these were professional groups, these were white-collar, if you will, workers. This was a large cross-section. And that total number of the 14 people that we asked that question to, the total number in that room came to 3,500 jobs. That's bigger than anything we look at. So when you think about that, we had that capacity in Northeast Georgia. If we had the people, we could have added that many new jobs, but we don't have it. Now, how many more are out there in the smaller areas? These were the big guys. How many in the smaller areas do we have that capacity? And to keep them from automating, they would have the jobs if we just had the people. And to have the people if we just have the housing. We had the communities that accepted that. That's where the need is. So with that, I'll have some. If you've got time for questions, I'm glad to.
Any questions, Bob?
I got one. Brittany? Whenever you talk about that we got new jobs and the economic impact is billions of dollars, and I've been in finance for a lot of years, my numbers, I can't ever get to where y'all are going with that, because we get jobs up there, we get like a manufacturing, they say they're getting $2 billion impact, whatever. But then when I look, the contractors are from out of state, or out of the county, the concrete's coming from somewhere else. None of that money's actually being spent there. Do y'all have a way of breaking down to see what's actually being spent in that county whenever a new job comes in?
We run, obviously, because we have incentives in the project, we have to run basically an economic impact model. And I don't think our models get that specific. It does get, what money's going into the community, what, is being taxing on the services that are needed for the constituents that would be hired within the facility and the facility itself. So we don't really get that specific in analyzing that. I know there are communities out there that write it up into their MOUs that the company, they encourage the company to use local contractors, subcontractors to support the project.
So where do y'all come up with the actual impact then? Does it take into like tax credits?
Yes.
Does that count as?
Well, that investment is actually just solely alone on the real and personal property that the company is investing in. So that number isn't even, the multiplier isn't even in that number. That's
So
just
that's
specifically
building the building.
building the
cost.
building, buying the land, buying the equipment.
Okay.
Tenant improvements, that's what that number looks like. I'm sorry,
Okay.
I misunderstood your question. So yes, that's just specifically what the company will be investing in. That doesn't even factor in the payroll that the company would be spending. It's specifically just real personal property.
And the reason I bring that up on the road, listen to something Mr. Chairman can. Years ago, what's it called, the saving the risk, the deal that we've been working on, where the schools come in and they bid everything out. What used to, that if it was a tier 1, the reason it was because those communities needed jobs, and you had electricians and you had builders and everybody could kind of generate a little bit of income. Well, now it's got to the point where over the years somebody's lobbied somebody, and now to be an electrician, I've got to have a $2.5 million insurance. Or, I'm just using this number for example, $2.5 billion insurance liability policy. Well, if I'm only building school in my area once every 2 or 3 years, or 10 years or whatever, then it don't justify for me to do that. So then I go out of business. So now we'll have to bring somebody in from somewhere else. And it's just getting like that just over and over again to where it's really no advantage to be a tier 1 community to come in and build a new school or jail or whatever. And that's kind of what we've done throughout Georgia, especially through 07 through 14. And I think that goes right back to your housing deal too, because now you can't find those people. So you talk to any contractor, he can't find anybody. If you want to build a house, you can't find a contractor because he's working for Thomas building 12 houses. And so it kind of trickles down from that. So I think that's one thing, we talk about cutting red tape. I think that's some stuff that we can seriously get some good stuff out of if we cut that.
I think Spencer said it because if you look at, let's say 15% is typically an average of what the profit margin is on a building. 15% of 300,000 is a lot more than on 100,000 or 150.
But it's just opposite in my area. You build a $300,000 house, you make 10 or 15,000, 20,000, something like that, because when you get into that market, everybody's a little picky about the size of the bedroom and the closet and where the refrigerator goes.
Yeah.
But when you're building, right now, you're building $80,000 house, I've seen them jump from 112 in the last 6 months to 140. And it's still costing you the same because materials actually went down. So actually, that's where you're making money at, and that's where we're building all over the place and selling as soon as we can get them built.
I guess we can't find the builders because they're wherever you are.
Yeah.
They're not up here.
Anybody else?
Can I ask Robert a question? On your pipeline deal, you know, and we're talking about affordable housing, whether the people graduate or drop out, they still got student debt, which throws into the problem of can't afford anywhere to live, which rolls into the problem of they got to live wherever they can find somewhere, and that may not be where a company of yours wants to locate. So
That's correct.
it's a big old snowball effect. And can I ask you one more question? The baby making crowd. and the Generation Z, which this is the first I've heard of that, I don't know who that is, but that are wanting to live somewhere and then find a job. And they're wanting amenities or whatever they want. Is that within a certain driving distance, or is that in the community they want to live in?
Sometimes, hold on to your seat here. They may not have a car, and they don't want a car. That's something that you need to realize, that there are people, and I have one child who I made her get her driver's license at age 20 before she left to go to Colorado. And she still didn't have a car, and she used public transportation. She would rather, because she said, I don't want to waste my money on that, I don't want to. There are people like that, and that's where you have to start thinking, is our community auto-centric, or is it walk-friendly? And that's why they're gravitating to areas where mass transit is available. And Sam, coming from Chicago, he understands people live up there without cars because they can use mass transit, and you can do that in Atlanta.
See, the reason I'm asking, Ellicott, for example, we don't have what Athens does, but we 40 miles from Athens. But I guess if you ain't got a car and don't want one, it doesn't matter, does
It doesn't. Maybe 140, it doesn't matter.
You got me.
I never thought of it like that, but
Well, that's why I'm trying to educate a lot of the communities and help them understand things have changed quickly. Good question.
Well, I know this isn't the first time you've talked about this issue. Could you tell us about a conversation that you hosted in March at the aquarium and kind of what came out of that?
Yeah, I hosted in on March 15th a group of people from Georgia, all over Georgia, to come and talk about housing. It's a conversation on housing. And what it was about is just to do what we're doing today. It's just to bring points aware that everybody realize these are the issues. And Sam's group and Habitat from Atlanta was there. A number of people that came and spoke. And then I had developers, I had cities, I had people who had fought against each other present both sides. So it really had a big picture. And we're going to meet at the end of October as to say, where do we go from here? And so we're going to have a follow-up meeting. And really, the conversations are going on, and people have them in Atlanta, but I wanted to have them outside of Atlanta because, to me, rural Georgia is where I live. And I'm trying to address those issues and try to resolve it. And say, at least let's start talking about it so we can understand the issue, just like you understood about cars now. And about, you can live in downtown Elberton and work there and so forth. So, you know, you can make cities alive again, and I think that's really what I'm going to, is saying, how do we make this available for people, especially in the retail trade or the food service trail sector that we are trying to attract people. Do we have jobs for people who, we like to eat out? Do the restaurants have places where people can walk to work, the cooks and so forth?
Good point.
I don't know how many people in the room have ever been over to the Economic Development Building, 75 Fifth Street. I had the opportunity 2 weeks ago to go in. I spent a half a day. I couldn't stay the rest of the afternoon with my home county of Harris County. Had the chair lady was there, another commissioner, the county manager, the Chamber of Commerce, the Economic Development people. We went down and sat down for 4 hours, and they presented your chart about the skilled workforce. That was one of the slides they presented. They talked, because we were talking about specifics, you know, James was asking about specifics. They talked specifically about Harris County. How many people leave the county every day and go to Columbus and LaGrange for the workforce? How many people work in the county? I was born in Harris County. I won't tell you what year. I was born in Harris County a long time ago. Holy mackerel. In the daytime, there's nobody left. They're all down in Columbus, or they're up in LaGrange. They want to sleep in Harris County and hear the tree frogs on Saturday morning, but they're working somewhere else. And it will shock you to see those real numbers. My challenge is, ask your local officials, your county commissioners, and I challenge each one of us, go with our counties and go to that facility. That's pretty doggone eye-opening experience right there. To sit there, ask them any questions you want, look at the numbers for your specific county, your region. They have them. They have them. So that is great info. Last little tidbit, I'm selling my truck, so the next 3 meetings are in Pine Mountain down in Harris County. We don't have mass transit. But anyway, no, let's give these two a round. Really appreciate coming. Great crowd in here too. Here's what we're going to do. As I announced a little earlier, we've got a couple of drinks back there and a couple of sandwiches we're going to divide up. Let's take till 12:30. That's 35 minutes. You want to stretch your legs, walk up the hill, or drive up the hill. I don't know exactly how it is. And grab some. All kind of places, Tom said, right up the hill here. Give everybody a chance to take a break. You can leave your stuff here. The room will be secure, I'm pretty sure. I don't see Al around. We'll make sure the room is secure. I don't know about leaving your pocketbook, but, well, yeah, leave your pocketbook. No, I'm just teasing. But go, let's come back at 12:30. So try to get back at 12:25, and then we're going to jump right back in this. This is pretty interesting stuff. Thank you. Okay, now, for your afternoon, and hey, time's going so quick, we're flying right on by. This afternoon, from the Department of Community Affairs, Ms. Tanya Curry. I've heard Ms. Curry speak before. I forget what company, maybe in Jekyll Island for some electric cities. I don't know.
Something like that, yes.
Something like that. But talked to her several times on the phone. Really appreciate her volunteering. She'll give you her criteria. I know she's Deputy Commissioner of Housing and at DCA, and actually talked to Christopher Nunn a couple of days, the commissioner. Saw him yesterday. Went to his church yesterday. Saw him at Peachtree Road Methodist Church in Atlanta. But we're certainly glad to have her with us this afternoon. So I'm going to turn it over to you. Remember, jot those questions down, and at the end, let's ask some great questions.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee members, guests, all of our partners that we work with quite a bit at DCA on a regular basis. It's great to have a turnout like this at an event like this. As the chairman said, I'm Tanya Curry. I'm Deputy Commissioner for Housing with the Georgia Department of Community Affairs. You probably know we've got 2 big buckets of things we do at DCA. We do the housing side of things, and then we do the community development side. And so I'm responsible for pretty much all of the housing programs. I'm not going to, probably not going to get through all of them today. I tried to narrow it down to the ones that are focused on the financing needs, the financing options and tools for addressing workforce housing. But just a little bit by way of background. You all probably know that we have several tools that are available. One on the development side for building housing, both multifamily and single family. And then we also have some tools that are available on the single family side to the individuals who may be seeking home ownership or home rehabilitation services. And so those are the main ones that I'm going to focus on today. Of course, if there are any other questions or you have any other questions about any of our other programs, I'm happy to circle back and get back with you a little bit later on. But I am back at DCA. I've been back at DCA for about 6 months now. DCA was my first job, my first state job many years ago, about 2 decades ago almost. I started with DCA when it was Georgia Housing Finance Authority, and then DCA merged. Commissioner Higdon was our commissioner at that time, and now I feel like I've come full circle, and I'm very happy to be back working in the housing arena. Immediately prior to this, I worked at the Georgia Department of Human Services, and so you might realize that we, as a state, serve most of our vulnerable Georgians through the Human Services arm. So that's child support and SNAP and monies that are available. And our goal is always to get our citizens to that point of self-sufficiency, to that point of being able to find a job where they can earn a living wage, and then of course get access home ownership if that's something that they're interested in doing. We've talked a lot today about a little bit about the millennials and all the generations in between. I think that you probably could say that even the seniors, though, are sometimes looking for that downsized home, that special home where they don't have to get around as much, do as much, less yard, all of that as well. So as we've had so many discussions here today, I'm thinking in my mind that maybe there's some sort of housing needs assessment, a statewide assessment that might be needed to just kind of figure out where we are in terms of what people really want and what we have to offer as we go about trying to figure all this out. But today, I'm going to talk a little bit about the low-income housing tax credit. That's a program that is accessed by the developers. It's not accessed by the individual communities. I'm sorry, committee members, I have a pretty big presentation there in front of you all, and it is, hopefully everyone has one. Okay, great. I'm going to talk also about the Community Home Investment Program, also known as CHIP, the Georgia Dream Home Ownership Program, Home Safe Georgia, and then finally, there's a little typo, our Georgia Initiative for Community Housing. So, just a little bit about DCA and how you can contact us. You probably know where our central office is in the Atlanta area, but we also have an office in Waycross and in Norcross. We have about 400 employees, and importantly, we have our regional reps that are all across the state. And Beth is here with us today. Raise your hand, Beth. Beth is one of our regional reps from, I won't try to say what number, Beth, what?
Region 5.
Region 5, which is
North Georgia.
North Georgia area. And so our regional reps are really the eyes and ears of DCA across the state. And so if you ever have any needs, please feel free to reach out to my office directly or to one of our regional reps. But we talked a little bit, and one of the representatives asked this earlier today about, is there a single family tax credit available? And that's an interesting question. There's not one available right now on the federal level, but there is legislation that is pending right now that would provide that type of tax credit at the single family level that we have at the multifamily level. So that's something that DCA is watching and supporting. It's supported by all of the state housing finance agencies across the country, and our national association is keeping up with that on our behalf. But if Congress were to pass something like that, I think that would be a game changer in terms of providing a credit, a tax credit to single-family home developers, because that is not available now. On the multifamily side, it sounds like this group is very familiar with the low-income tax credit program. It is that private sector participation. It provides a credit, either a 9% credit or a 4% credit to the developer. And that allows them to put that money back into their project and also obviously bring down the cost of the project somewhat. The 9% process is a competitive process, and so there is a annual funding round that goes on a regular basis. We're in the process of the 9% competitive round right now, getting feedback from communities and from stakeholders. But what happens is there are a lot of different requirements, because again, this is a federal program. But the developers compete to win award of those credits, and then private investors are going to purchase those tax credits and put those monies back into whatever that development is. And one of the main requirements is that you do have to have that affordability for at least 30 years on the development. So on the 9% side, there are incentives that are available for things like being located near public transportation, aligning with the community revitalization plan, other funds that may be in the deal or in the transaction, that could be home funds or CDBG funds. There also are incentives for historic preservation. And then the last thing that I'm going to talk about separately is the GIG program, because that is an incentive that I think benefits a lot of local communities, or some local communities, and also provides incentive in the tax credit process. On the 4% side, and I'm going through this tax credit piece a little bit quickly because I really want to get to the parts that are available to the individuals and to the homeowners. On the 4% side, these projects are done in connection with tax-exempt bonds. So if a local tax-exempt bond issuer is issuing bonds to fund a multifamily project, the 4% credits are available, and those are not competitive. Those are available if a project comes forward that meets all the other criteria. So just a little bit of impact. You can see, and these numbers are a little bit older just because it takes a little while to figure out exactly how many units have been built. It takes a little while for them to be built after the credits are awarded. But based on the 2016 tax credits, 2,438 units were built. Each development averaged about 90 units. And so you can see that that gives a certain amount of community benefit, not only to the local governments, but also in terms of jobs, etc. Statewide average and the local government average are listed there, and it looks like in 2016 our average was about 4,145 jobs as a result of those projects. A couple of other tax credit benefits. We've got some incentives for developers who are building senior projects. They also have incentives related to working families and individuals with disabilities. And when I say incentives, the qualified allocation plan process is a points-based process. So when the developer is developing their entire project, as they go through the process, there are points available for different types of incentives. And so it's kind of summarized here, and it's a little bit more involved in the actual application process, but the developers understand what they need to do in order to evidence and to provide these types of incentives, and therefore to get additional points in the credit awarding process. In the 2018 funding round, we received 60 applications. 33 of those were funded, and you can see here that out of that 60, there were 13 senior properties and 17 rural properties that were funded. And just to say a little bit about the rural side of it, there is a rural set-aside in the qualified allocation plan process, so developers do get additional points when they're located in rural areas. And so that's definitely a benefit, and definitely something that we see developers taking advantage of. Just a little bit about the time frame. You can see it here. I won't read through it, but we are in the process of finalizing, getting close to finalizing the public input on our current qualified allocation plan. The governor will sign it in the January and February time frame, and then it will be available for the 2020 round. So how can local governments get involved? They really should start and initiate conversations with their developers. The developers that are most active with DCA are also very involved with their communities. And you can also go to the DCA website and see a list of awarded tax credits. And that's really the place that most people go and see. For example, these are the 33 projects that were awarded. You can get a little bit of idea of the number of units they had, what the amenities were, what type of things they were able to do in the funding, et cetera, et cetera. Plan. We can't say plan enough. That's a big part of what we try to support and encourage local communities to do, because those are the projects that tend to be funded most often, because they've been very thoughtful and comprehensive about making their plan for submitting an application. Okay, so that was just a little bit about the multifamily side. The discussion today has been focused a good amount on home ownership and also the single family side. So the rest of the presentation focuses a good amount on single family tools. And so the Community Home Investment Program, we refer to it as CHIP. Again, this is not available to individuals, but it's available to communities who apply for these funds. And so a local government can apply for CHIP funds for rehabilitation or new construction of single-family homes. All of these projects are funded with federal home funds, and again, like everything, it's not an unlimited supply, so this is a competitive process, but we tend to be awarded, and this is from HUD, Georgia tends to be awarded about 3 to 6 million statewide annually, and so we're able to have about 10 to 15 grantees per year. And that doesn't mean we're doing 10 to 15 homes. That means we've got 10 to 15 local communities that are receiving funds. And they may do 4 units or 6 units of new construction, or obviously you can do more if you're rehabbing your existing communities. And so that again also is a competitive process. Over the last 20 years, there's been about $34 million put back into 4,000 homes statewide. On the housing rehab side, again, there are grants available. They tend to average about $300,000 per local government, and depending on your community, you can do, you can spread that out however best works in your community. The estimate or the average is usually about $50,000 per home for repairs, lead testing and abatement, and these things are delineated in the CHIP, in the federal program. So what you can use the money for is delineated in the federal program. But again, many homes are eligible for those repairs, the lead testing, abatement, and the local community is able to keep $4,000 per home for that process. And so they usually have a home administrator or a position within their local jurisdiction that is managing this process. On the grantee side, again, on the local government side, they're responsible for finding qualified homeowners, overseeing and qualifying the contractors, doing the inspections, doing the lead testing, the environmental reviews, and also processing the loan documents, and et cetera. So that's where some of that administrative cost comes from. But it's a good source of funding and can supplement a position or a person who this could be all or part of their job depending on the jurisdiction. On the single family side, again, this is not for one home. This is up to $600,000 for housing construction for several units. And I don't have an average here of what the actual purchase price of the home might be, but it's definitely within our affordable range, and that's going to vary depending on the location. And you can see the monies that are available here. The homeowner has to maintain that affordability period for up to 15 years. And so once the grantee gets, yes, sir?
The trust says no set limit for construction costs.
That means that the jurisdiction, they can put in as much money as they want to into that particular. Our amounts are going to be set by the federal affordability regulations, but say, for example, if a jurisdiction wanted to put in a little bit extra, or $20,000 more, or make it a little bit, designed in a certain way, they have the ability to put that in.
Okay.
Yeah. And these are some of the things that the grants are used for. Market analysis, the plans, the specs, And these are some of the things that are required as part of the grant. For the local community, the homes have to be sold within 9 months of the construction being completed. And again, this is not something that just happens fairly quickly. We have a team that works with each local jurisdiction on how all of this rolls out. There's a complete plan in place, there's a timeline, et cetera, and it's not like we're managing the construction, but we are overseeing the use of the funds. So there's a reporting, a monthly reporting process, et cetera, that our office is receiving back regarding these funds. Yes?
And if the, you know, you gotta sell it within 9 months, but if there's some circumstances, do you work with people to get an extension of that period of time, or how does that work?
I am aware of situations where they've gotten very close and where they've had to have an extension, and that's typically a waiver that we've got to consider individually. And what we would do is communicate that to HUD and say this is the circumstance, and kind of get their input or their approval of the waiver in order to make that happen. But for the most part, people are working to get to the point where that is completed within that time frame. And again, that's just some of the responsibilities of the grantees. They've got to find that developer. If it's renovation, they've got to identify those homes to be renovated. Again, find the qualified home buyers, any pre-purchase counseling, and selling the home and maintaining that lien of affordability. Here are a couple of examples. This is a home constructed by the Southwest Georgia Regional Commission, reconstructed. That's the before and after. So you can see that was a pretty significant rehab. Here's another example in Washington, Georgia, of a few homes on a particular street, and it looks like they were able to construct 3 or 4 homes using CHIP new construction funds. In terms of the application process, the application is released in the first week of September. It's already out. It's on our website, so it's definitely something that is accessible now. The application is due back during the first week of December. Any questions about the CHIP before I go on to the Georgia Dream program? A lot of people are familiar with the Georgia Dream Home Ownership Program. This is our mortgage program. The state, through GHFA, through the Georgia Housing Finance Authority, issues the state's single-family mortgage revenue bonds. And so those funds are made available to fund first-time home buyer mortgages. Now, we are not making those loans directly. The loans are issued through lenders across the state. And we've got hundreds of lenders that participate in our program. It does require home buyer counseling, and there's down payment assistance that's available for any first-time home buyer, but then there's also a little bit extra that's available for our PIN program. That's our public protectors, educators, and healthcare providers, as well as active military. So I actually, I've left a few brochures in the back and a lot of information about this program and a few of our other programs, but this is kind of I don't want to say it's a best kept secret, but people are always surprised that we've got this down payment assistance available. So it's certainly something that we want to make known, because it's needed, and you can see some of the purchase price limits there on the chart on the side. It's a little bit higher in some of the metropolitan counties, but any other county not in that first box, the purchase price of the homes are between up to $200,000 and $250,000. So it's a good opportunity. In terms of the process, there is a credit score requirement. There is a home buyer education class that's required. You do have to be pre-qualified with a participating lender. But for most of the people that are looking to access our Georgia Dream program, it's a little bit more accessible than just going directly to a lender. You know, these days, people have that mortgage app, that Rocket Mortgage or whatever you see. You can just push the button and they think they're going to get qualified for a mortgage. Well, it doesn't really happen that way. At DCA, our homeowners, our Georgia Dream program, we have housing counselors that we work with across the state. They're a little bit more accessible to help people with the things about improving your credit, understanding what you might need to do to be a first-time home buyer. And it's a lot in line with what the representatives from Habitat talked about. We want people to really buy in and to be vested in what the undertaking that they're about to start. They're not actually helping to build these homes, but they are a little bit more engaged and a little bit more invested than if you just went to a lender directly. And our lenders realize that, and they're a little bit more, I don't know how many people have either been trying to maybe refinance or qualify for a new mortgage lately, but it's a pretty onerous process, right? And so we know that, and we know that these people are first-time home buyers, so we really try to work with them to be able to participate in the program. And then that's just the website there for anyone who may be interested. It's very straightforward. Now, Home Safe Georgia. This is one that people are always surprised about when I say this. This has been around for a few years now. How many people have heard of Home Safe Georgia? A few, great. This is a federal program that came out several years ago now after the recession, but it helps homeowners directly who are behind or underwater on their mortgage payments. This program is a federal program. Georgia, like many states, received hundreds of thousands of dollars to fund this project. And so when we say underwater, we mean you owe more than your home is worth. And when we say reinstatement, it means that you're actually making monthly payments, but you're a little bit behind. An eligible homeowner can receive up to $50,000 in assistance. That's federal money that is absolutely and directly available to homeowners who fall in one of these two categories. Yes?
Do you have the number that have actually used this, or y'all have helped with this, say in the last year?
I think we do. I think coming up I've got some numbers, or I've got them on, I don't have the exact number, but we do have it by region. We don't have it by individual counties, but I can certainly get the committee some of the information for your individual jurisdictions.
So if they use part of, say if they meet the qualifications and they needed $25,000, is that repaid over a certain period of time?
It is.
Like a loan?
It is. And so that we've been receiving, it's not paid back as long as they're staying in the home. But if they sell the home within a certain amount of time, then they do have to pay it back. And Georgia's actually received about $9 million in repayments.
So the money they get catches them up on their payments with a financial institution. They start making their regular payments, and then they don't pay that back.
They don't pay that back if it's within the required time period. And again, this is federal money. This is money that the federal government made available after 2008. Yes?
So this program is still going on? I thought DCA had repurposed that money at some point.
Not this money, but I will say this, it's not around forever. It's been around since about 2000, a little after the recession, but it is almost set to sunset federally by the end of 2020 calendar year. So we have about $22 to $24 million that's left in this program. And so again, it is available to any Georgian who falls within this category and meets the other requirements.
Do those categories like veteran or military, does any of that come into play on this? Is it something?
It does not come into play directly, but if they meet those threshold requirements, and if, for example, if to get the $50,000 in principal reduction, you have to have your property's loan to value ratio is greater than 110. So that's pretty accessible for somebody who may be just a little bit underwater, or maybe just have missed a couple of payments, but got back on track. Maybe they lost a job, maybe they were unemployed, but they're behind. They're not quite in that foreclosure range, because if you get to the foreclosure range, it's not going to stop with foreclosure. You've got to still be processing. And what we do at DCA, we actually are able to pull foreclosure statistics, and we're not able to go to the people directly because they have to come to us, but we do have kind of mass mailings, we do community events, we've got home ownership fairs, wherever we can get the information out, we're getting it out there. Because if we start that discussion, people are usually pretty interested in coming forward to at least see if they qualify. And this is the reinstatement piece. If the delinquency was caused by a qualifying hardship, which any of these are pretty involved, pretty basic. Underemployment, unemployment, military, divorce, a catastrophic medical disability or death. What we usually see is that people are a little bit squeamish about providing the documentation that evidences this, but once they realize that they're going to be able to get the funds, if they're able to show that they were unemployed or that they're going through a divorce and that that's what caused them to get behind, or maybe they were both, then they're usually able to come forward. And that's just a little bit of information on Home Safe Georgia. The final program, I think, is one that's most beneficial to communities. It's the Georgia Initiative for Community Housing, and a couple of the other speakers mentioned this. This is a program that we do in conjunction with, get to some of our partners, Georgia Power, UGA, Georgia Municipal Association. We just had a gift retreat last week. And so this is a great program that is aimed at providing technical assistance to local governments, really on best practices on how they can build capacity and knowledge, and really an infrastructure for developing their local housing planning efforts. And so it's a 3-year commitment. Local governments can apply, and they can, I think over the past several years, we've probably had 3 to 6 entities participate per year. And so they go through the program for 3 years, and each year, as they move forward with their cohort, they're developing different skills through facilitated workshops, expert presentations. They may be able to host a city tour, and lots of networking and idea sharing that goes on. And so since 2004, DCA has invested close to about $361 million across 71 GIC communities. And this is important because it builds that capacity that especially smaller communities need in order to develop their projects or understand how the development process works or how the economic development tools and the housing tools work. We bring all of those things together to them. It's a commitment on their part. They have to identify a team. They have to bring their team to the regular meetings. And sometimes, that's a little bit of a challenge, but almost everybody is able to do that. I don't think that there have been too many communities that have not successfully completed the program, although there have been a couple that have fallen out. And this allows them to build that capacity and learn about the things that they need to know to be a successful community developing either housing. We focus primarily on housing, but as you can imagine, it touches on all the other programs that are provided by DCA, whether that's CDBG funds or housing assistance funds or any of the other things that we provide. And so it's a great program for the communities. As I said, they just had a retreat last week, and after the 3 years, you graduate out, you're a GIC certified community, and going back to the tax credit funding cycle, there's actually also an extra point on the application process for GIC certified communities, because for us that means that you've gone through what you need to do as a community to learn the best practices and learn the capacity building things that are important to make you successful. And so the curriculum changes and is tweaked from year to year depending on what the needs are and what the focus is, but for the most part it's a 3-year program where the communities come together, they get to know each other really well, and they learn from each other. And so this program predates me, but it's been very successful collaboration between UGA, DCA, Georgia Municipal Association, and Georgia Power. And then, let's see. They work on some of their projects. They learn a lot about the tax credit program, the CHIP, and CDBG. They also it's not like you're not eligible to participate in those funding rounds while you are an identified community, so that's beneficial for them. And so most of the programs at the retreat last week, I was surprised to see so many communities using so many of our different funding sources and funding mechanisms. But it's really something that, you know, many, many, many more communities should take advantage of, or at least apply for, and then over time, we'll be able to provide probably more and more. Right now, it's only about 4 or 5 or 6 maximum communities that participate at a time. But I think as the demand increases, it will be able to provide more assistance to more communities. And that's just a little bit about some of the topics that are covered at the annual retreats. You can see here an example of some of the current GIT communities, and they identify them as freshman, junior, and sophomore just to identify the first year, second year, and third year. But these are the 2019 communities. As I said, it's been going on since about 2004, and so there have been many, many communities across the state that have participated. And it is a benefit, not only to us, but to the communities. It's a benefit to us because they understand what we do and how we do it, and so it makes them more successful in our funding rounds. And this is an example we threw in of a workforce housing, quote unquote, opportunity. It's called Pembroke, and it's nearby. It's near Fort Stewart, but you can see they had a couple of different housing styles. I think at lunch someone was talking about having housing available, not super fancy, not a lot of amenities for, say, playgrounds or things like that, but the basic housing needs that you might have. And so this is one example of a workforce housing example that DCA has funded to support new industrial development in that area. I think I've got some pictures. In general, and I won't go through this whole list, but there are many, many things that DCA can help communities with. Everything from code enforcement to urban development to fair housing, of course the housing tax credits and all the home ownership programs that we've talked about. We are really here to partner with anyone who's interested in working on housing. Someone was mentioning to me that earlier that typically when somebody comes to DCA, we try to figure out a way to work with whatever it is, the initiative that they have, as long as it meets the requirements that we're bound by, and that is something that we really strive to do because we do intend to just provide fair and affordable housing across the state of Georgia. So I think that's about it. If there are any questions, I'm happy to try to answer them at this time.
Committee, anybody got any questions on it? Well, that's, the map was good, because Trick County, that's in my district.
Exactly.
I lucky kind of get it. Yeah, Tom's got one.
Yes.
What we are meeting on this whole thing over till December is affordable housing for normal people to be able to live local where they work at, not have to drive and run up their transportation costs. And I was looking at all the pictures we have in here, and the houses that y'all have either rehabbed or built, none of them have any particular siding standard or driveway standard or any kind of regulation like that.
Well, our developers have got to build it to whatever the existing standards are.
I understand that, but what I'm asking is, as long as it's built to a building code safety standard, is all of this other stuff that certain communities may be implementing, the affordability of either a rehab or a new house or something for a school teacher to be able to afford close to where she works. Or a fireman, do you understand?
Right, you're understanding. No, I understand. You're saying are they adding more to it that's making it less affordable to?
Correct.
Typically.
It's not necessarily safety or livability. It's just inadvertent community standard. Do you follow what I'm asking?
I do see what you're asking. I think that for the most part, no, not really for the most part, all of our projects have got to be built to the federal requirements and the income limits. And so, in terms of the affordability of it, it has to meet those federal affordability standards. And so sometimes developers are looking to get input from the local, communities on what they want to see, because of course they have to get that local participation. It's not required as a requirement, but they do want to. They're not going to bring a development that is not doesn't have the blessing of that community, and so they do get input from the community about what they want to see in terms of, amenities and the bells and whistles. But from our perspective, it has to meet the affordability and the safe and decent and affordable standpoint.
So if the bells and whistles are overbearing, then y'all don't go there, right?
That is true. We're not going to build anything that is beyond what that is. And again, we're looking at national standards and what we've built across the state in that regard. But for example, something might come up that's a new sustainability kind of feature or something like that. If it's something that's going to expand the preservation of the property, then maybe that's something that we would look at, because that's going to maintain the affordability and the state's investment in that particular property. But we're not looking at things that are just, to be fancy or to compare to the market rate that's right next door. Yes, sir.
Go ahead, go first.
Thank you. Following up on Representative McCall's question, have you found that any of the communities that are trying to attract affordable housing will suspend or allow those projects that you're funding to forego some of those aesthetic requirements, or help them out with permit cost or expedite review or those types of things? Have you found any local governments who are suspending their local requirements in order to get that affordable property put in place?
I'm not aware of any that are doing that, but I can certainly look into that and see if, say for example, in our last several funding rounds, if we received those types of requests. If I had to say in general, I would say no, but I would have to kind of double check to see what has been submitted. Because in the big picture of the transaction, if the transaction works, sometimes there are things that tweak, but for the most part, they've got to, that's a threshold requirement that they meet whatever those local standards are, so.
Thank you.
One more.
Yes.
So I think Frank here, what was trying, that house that they rehabbed.
Yes.
Right there. All right.
The
It was just no
Washington
shotgun house, So some communities are putting so strenuous requirements on there, saying it's got to be 3-sided brick, or it's got to be hardy board, it's got to be a certain color, it's got to have architecture shingles. So then, have you seen where that cost of them doing that has raised up to where it basically prices the people out of being able to go in there and do?
It should not price the people out, because they've got to meet the income requirements for those houses.
Okay,
Yeah.
So
It should not price the residents out, because that's a threshold thing. That's a.
So it don't matter if it's an $80,000 house or a $150,000 house, they still got to meet the requirements.
The income requirements. So of course, they're only going to build a house though they're not going to build a house that's not going to, or where they're not going to make a profit. And for the local governments, they're not going to build a house typically where they've got to put more in, unless that's a decision that they want to make locally.
Okay.
To their question, real quick, it doesn't really matter if you're talking about affordable housing or workforce housing or attainable housing. So whether it's incentive-based or it's not incentive-based, every time you add something on, you're eliminating purchasing power for their program. Does not matter if it's public sector, private sector. Every step of that adds cost. And it's passed on to the consumer.
Yeah, kind of building on this conversation, have you found in communities, we mentioned politics earlier, sometimes there's an aversion to affordable housing, it could be multifamily housing. But if you did incorporate the design standards, then perhaps it was a bit more palatable and actually encouraged more affordable housing in a community that might not have otherwise been as welcoming to it?
Again, I'm not specifically aware of that, but our programs are always, you know, oversubscribed in terms of the competitiveness of it. I don't want to say for sure that there aren't, but that's probably not the case. But it's definitely something we could look into.
I don't want to rush it because we could talk on, but we have the last presenters coming up, a duo. But look, let's thank Ms. Curry.
Over here if anybody wants to take some.
We're going to have these two great guys coming up. I've known one a long time, Michael Perry's coming here, Council of Quality Growth, and Paul, the chairman. I'm going to let y'all do your own bio like I did everybody else. While you're getting ready, I didn't bring enough cards for everybody, so I'm just going to write my cell phone number up here on the board. And if you want to call me about anything.
Cell phone number? Oh, your cell phone.
Actually, this is my wife's cell phone number, so she'll get in touch with you. And no, just give me a call. All right, I'm going to give it to y'all, so I won't waste your time.
Mr. Chairman, committee members, thank you for having us here today. We really appreciate it. I know a lot of people in the room. Michael Paris, President and CEO of the Council for Quality Growth, and this is Paul Corley. Paul Corley is a builder, home builder. He's CEO of EA Homes and now Empire Communities here in Atlanta. Paul's been in the business for 25 years, and he is also my incumbent boss come January 1st as he will be chairman of the Council for Quality Growth.
I hadn't looked at it that way. But I bet.
And this is Kimberly Steele, who is our policy analyst, one of our policy analysts from the council. Just real quick, I like Vance. It's not like I don't see Vance like 10 times a week. Council Quality Growth, just real quick, we are a trade association. We represent the growth and development industry. We are 34 years old. Our members are builders and developers and general contractors and land use attorneys and engineers. All of the community improvement districts almost in the region are part of the council. We spend a lot of our time in the metro Atlanta region, working in the region. We work primarily, I would say 70% of our time with local government, the cities and the counties. As you may know, there are 83 cities and counties in the 10-county area, and then we work around the edges and then work at the state capitol on issues related to land use, environmental regulation, water resources, economic development, and always transportation funding. Being here at this point, I think really gives us an opportunity to talk about workforce housing, affordable housing from sort of the private industry and development point of view. I'm going to just give sort of a quick overview of a couple of things. I think Paul is a guy that represents the industry. He writes the checks and makes the investments, and those are really, down in the weeds issues for folks in that industry because it's their investment that helps make this happen. So a couple of things I'd like to start off with. I mean, the council, we've spent a lot of time with various local governments talking about what is affordable housing, what is workforce housing. I think all of us sort of struggle with that a little bit because every different community that we've worked with on this issue has a different definition. I mean, there are federal guidelines and there are all kinds of numbers, but I think somebody said it earlier, and it may be when Rope referred to workforce housing in different communities. It's a little bit different to every community. So we spend a lot of time in the city of Atlanta working with Councilman Andre Dickens, for example, on his ambitions for affordable housing inside the city, which sort of got reduced down to an inclusionary zoning zone along the Beltline for multifamily units. I think and we continue to work with the city on that, but the city of Atlanta, even with all their needs, continues to struggle mightily on what works and what won't work. And a lot of it is around incenting local developers or developers to build that portion of affordable housing into their projects. The inclusionary zoning aspect of it has not proven hugely successful. I think Hayden can attest to that. It affected the multifamily units around the Beltline because the price, the tab was simply too high. I think I could say the investment
threshold was too high to have, 10 or 15% affordable units in those projects. And folks just moved across the line, outside of the zone. So I just say that is by way of illustrating the challenges I think we all face in trying to solve a problem that I think all of the development community wants to address and wants to face and wants to solve. So one of the things that we talk about, and this is not a new, these are not new words to those of you who look at this issue. Four main things that really affect our ability to produce affordable workforce housing: labor, law, and land and lumber. And those are pretty self-explanatory, but I thought I would just go over a couple of thoughts on these. First off, as you all know, the labor market, we talked about this a little bit, is really tight. The construction industry is hugely tight right now. And Paul, coming up here, told me the average age of the construction worker in Metro Atlanta is 45 or older. I think we know that labor costs have gone up considerably, rose 5.5% year over year as of the first quarter of 2019. And we do suffer a tremendous shortage in construction labor in the state of Georgia. With all of this new industrial construction, the commercial construction, the residential construction that's going on, it really affects the cost of providing housing, whether it's higher price or lower price housing. That goes all the way down through your general contractors and all of your subs. The other consequence of that is our ability, at least in the metro area, to produce even the basic housing stock we need in many price ranges. And Paul and I have been talking about that. He can talk about this a little bit more, but depending on which numbers you look at, the metro Atlanta area would normally process about 30,000 single-family permits a year, and we're able to only achieve around 20, and most of that due to labor, of course, and land cost. The second, the second area to focus on, I think, would be certainly the land cost, and the cost of land throughout the state, but certainly in the metro region, has really skyrocketed to the point, and we all know this logically, to provide affordable housing units is almost impossible. And I'm going to let Paul focus on that more when he speaks. And that goes for lumber too, which means literal lumber, but really for all construction materials. And that, the things that we talked about earlier, I won't go into a lot of detail on that, but we all know land and lumber are key elements of getting those houses up, and the cost exceeding the ability for an investor to make a decent return, a proper return, to provide that level of housing. But I do want to focus a little bit more on the law part, because what we do every day is, in Council for Quality Growth, is really work on the regulatory scheme, regulatory atmosphere about at the local level and the state level. How do we get any kind of builder, single-family, multifamily, residential, commercial, industrial, through a process, and the regulatory scheme that's in place allow for the kind of economic development that we want in our communities, and does allow for the return on investment to help guys like Paul produce the products that they want. So just some quick thoughts about that. Local governments, of course, and we encourage this, and we know this is the way it works. Each community has their own character. Each community has their own ability. It should have their own ability to strike the balance of the way they want their communities to look. But the increase in regulations that we've seen around the state, and this is in all areas, at times have increased the construction cost and the ability to produce units by as much as 35%, and in some cases even more. And these land use regulations, as great as they are and as great as they can be in helping us produce really great communities, really have contributed to the higher cost of housing. This goes to single family, goes to multifamily, and many of these regulations, as we've seen in some of our northern suburbs of Atlanta, have severely affected the ability of communities to have much needed multifamily housing constructed in those communities, and that's something that we really need to be very, very, very cautious about. And
this, it really goes to manufactured housing and all kinds of housing across the state. So when we look at our public service folks here, public safety folks, being able to live in the communities that they serve, when we are school teachers, we've talked about this a lot, our school teachers and folks that serve us every day in our communities, living where they work, it is almost impossible. I live in Cobb County, talk to our public safety folks in Cobb County, for example. I don't know what the percentage is, but it's not a large percentage of our public safety folks, fire and police, can't even afford to live in Cobb County. They live in Paulding, they live in Cherokee, or further north, or further west. And, you know, when they're driving an hour to get to their job every day to get in their police car, then there's something very wrong. Cobb has looked at various ways to address this issue for public safety folks, for example, at Cobb, but it is a very, very tough nut to crack. So I always think as you all go forward, as your committee, please keep those they call them the 4 L's, keep those 4 L's in mind, and especially the law part and the regulatory scheme that I think has a great effect for our ability to accomplish what we want to accomplish with this house. So I'm going to give it to Paul to let him talk.
Thank you, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here. And so I'm going to try and give you all a perspective from a guy out in the industry, in the private industry. And I think it is important that you do recognize, I mean, we talked about with DCA, I mean, there's affordable housing, which is typically incentive-based. What I focus on at Empire Communities at Rangers Homes is what I call attainable housing, which is really is workforce housing. If you look at the definition of workforce housing in Urban Land Institute, it meets a certain median income or average median income of that area. And you know, everybody in this room recognizes there's a huge problem. We need more affordable housing, we need more workforce housing, we need more what I call attainable housing. So we really focus, and I know this skews it a little bit, we do focus in the Atlanta metro area. I've been doing this for over 30 years. So you can tell me it doesn't look like it, but it's getting harder and harder. And our single biggest focus, 70% of our business is what I call attainable housing. And it's in the high growth areas. It's literally the golden triangle of Atlanta. It's from Cobb to Gwinnett, from Grant Park, around the zoo, going north all the way to Forsyth. And it is just getting harder and harder. And Michael talked about the 4 L's, and I'm going to focus a lot on the law part, because I am not a fan of big government. But if we don't do something, if we don't arm these local politicians with a way to address this issue, it'll never happen. So what I'm going to try to do is walk you through some examples. I do this a lot. I get up in front of people at these zoning meetings, and how many of you folks in here have ever been a city or a county official? Who started there? How hard is it sometimes to raise your hand and vote yes when you got a bunch of people out there yelling at you and voting no? So I see that all the time.
You've been in my county commission.
But, so what happens is nobody disputes that we have a huge issue with attainable housing. We have a huge issue in high growth areas for you guys to find living where you don't have to go 45 minutes. Now you add the fact that we have 75 million millennials overtaking baby boomers as the #1 buying or segment of the consumers that will be buying homes, will be buying everything. So those are going to even add to the problem. I take a lot of pride in providing the American dream. You know, people say millennials don't want to buy homes. That's not true. Millennials do buy homes. They buy them a little later. But I take a lot of pride in being able to provide homes. We do a lot of communities that home prices are in the 3s, 4s, and 5s, which in some of the areas that y'all are coming from may be very high. Where I'm at, that's very low. So, you know, my purpose is try to give you some perspective of what I'm facing. You know, the law part of it is, you know, is I really think the biggest holdback. Cost of construction. My costs on a single family home in year over year, last 12 months, up $7,000 to $9,000. I build single family homes from about 1,800 feet to 3,000 feet, up $7,000 to $9,000, just cost. On a townhome, which my average square footage is about 1,600 square feet, I'm up $4,000 to $5,000. That's 12 months. So every time that goes up. But, you know, Tom, you asked a great question about the governments, a lot of the governments are going absolutely the wrong way. I was on a panel for the Business Chronicle, and we were in Sandy Springs, and I wasn't picking on Mayor Paul, but I said the minute Mayor Paul doesn't accept the people working in his municipality, they go to the next one. And guess what? Then Roswell tells them, no, we don't want you, and they just keep going up the road. So Sam at the ARC talked about, that you're adding increased housing costing and transportation together. The Atlanta Chamber of Commerce used to tout that our region was one of the most affordable in the country. They don't do that anymore. They can't do that anymore. We have you take the housing costs plus the commute times of like an hour and 20 minutes on average for some people, the costs are just going up. So, how do I think we solve this problem? It's got to be at the local level. But the local level, because of issues we face in the state, be it water, sewer, transportation, the politicians have a very hard time. So I'll give you a couple of examples. I had a deal, everybody knows where Avalon is, right? I went in, I had a 60-home community on 10 acres, and on 6 acres, 10 units an acre, and I went in and staff loved it. I was going to build homes in the 300s, competitive with apartments. Staff loved it, and I met with all the city council people, they loved it. And then about 200 people showed up in opposition. I had 15 millennials show up that worked in Avalon to support it. It got denied. I'm in the process of a zoning right now in Buckhead. And my daughter is a senior in college, and we live there. And she's, we were eating Mexican food, and we were talking about she's going to be a teacher and what her salary is going to be and where she wanted to live. And she wanted to live close to mom and dad. And so we did the whole, well, here's your salary and Uncle Sam, and now your cost of living. And I had her Google, I had her pull up all the apartments in the area. Couldn't afford anything. I'm in the process of zoning a piece of property in Buckhead, pretty high income area, where I'm actually getting support. I got past the neighborhood planning units by talking about this need. At Avalon, there are 95,000 jobs within a 3-mile radius. And 88,000 of those people drive to other counties to live. In Buckhead, you heard Sam talk about that 90% of the people that work in Buckhead drive outside of Buckhead to live. They work in Buckhead, they drive to leave. So the problem is going to just continue to be there. Wages will not keep up with costs. Even if commodity prices flatten, labor costs are going to do nothing but go up. If you look at tariffs, you look at immigration, and you look at all the stuff on the material side, that's fine. That'll probably flatten out. But the labor part of it, my subcontractors that run big companies, they couldn't add a crew if they wanted to. There's just not enough to go around. So I think the only real way that we can address the housing problem that we have, whether it be affordable homes that has some incentive tied to it, whether it be workforce or whether it be attainable, which is what I like to use, is by density. We have to get more density in our communities. And we have to be provided, and so density belongs in the right area. So you are seeing some good things happen. There was a recent zoning in Roswell, which was highly contested, but it was an old decimated shopping center. And they converted it, put apartments and townhomes on there. And a good example is some things where the politicians did fight the political pressure. But to you guys, and I don't know where it starts at the state level, we have to look at density overlays. We have to look at opportunities for these politicians to come in and say, you know what, I've got to have a place for these guys. I've got to have a place for Jeff Watkins, who wants to live in Cherokee, in Woodstock. How long have you been in the planning department there?
17 years.
Yeah, a long time. Or for our teachers. But right now, they don't have any ammo. They don't have any ammo to make the decisions and resist the pressure to keep the people in the communities. I wanted to give you an example of a community that we built. This is in the city of Atlanta. It's called the Swift. This is literally in Boulevard Heights, which is just right next to the zoo. It was an old landfill. Literally, we built this on an old landfill, and we sold homes here. Kimberly, let me have the clip. Thanks. should know how to use it. This is a 122 home community, not on the belt line, but along the belt line. You can see the great thing about this was the proximity to downtown. So this is the belt line right here. Our home prices were in the 3s, gone absolutely fantastic. Literally built on a landfill. But the city gave us the density we needed to put home prices in the 300s. So, I'll show you. And this is our product. I mean, this is a 16-foot by 52-foot townhouse, 1,600 square feet. And I do have teachers. It's a 3-bedroom, so if it's a single person, they get their bedroom, they can rent out the second one, they can rent out the first one. My mortgage payment, 10% down on $350,000 here, is $2,300. That's 3 bedrooms. The 2 bedrooms that I competed with in the multifamily rental sector were all about the same. So somebody could own this, cover their mortgage, cover their taxes and their insurance by renting out a bedroom. But we have some teachers in here, we have some city employees, and a lot of them do have to rent to make it work. But it is possible, and the only way we made this possible, this is on $1 million an acre land, was density. I'll give you a little bit of math. I'll run you through the whole thing. So let's go to a suburban example. So if you went into Gwinnett County, we have a home that's called the Burke. Okay, it's 2,900 square feet. The base construction cost is $192,000. That's $66 a foot. Okay, so for that area, that's probably on a scale of 1 to 10. That's probably a 6 in terms of what it looks like. But using this example, when I get 2 units an acre, everything else remains the same. I have a transaction price of $452, just to make a builder margin of 18 to 20%. When I go to 4 units an acre, my transaction price comes down below $400,000. So the purchasing power of someone when that happens. So what has to happen here? The politicians have to be able to give me these 4 units an acre. If you go back and you look at something on the city of Atlanta, where we do a lot of work, same thing. On $1 million per acre land, on a 2,000 square foot townhouse, with 10 units an acre, I'm at $525. If I go to 20 units an acre, I'm at $435, which is $90,000 difference in home price. Okay? You saw the community, the product I built. It had a great amenity. It had great green space. It just had more density. And we're able to pass that on. So, just tried to give you some examples of what we see. It is, I do love what I do, but it is getting frustrating when we can't provide. The building industry, not just me. Whit Marshall was here. He had to leave. I saw a couple other people in the building industry. The industry got hammered really hard in the recession. But the guys that are building today have the ability, have the capital, have the want, have the desire to deliver housing at the right prices. We need some help to get there. We can't do it the way we're doing it. And you brought up the question on the things we face. I mean, there are some counties, I won't mention any, but if you go up 400 just above Fulton, and don't go to the Dawsonville outlet malls, am I allowed to do that?
Yes.
Okay, good. So in Forsyth County, the largest lot today is 18,000 square feet. I mean, 18,000 square feet. Okay, they have architectural requirements that you have to recess your garage 2 to 4 feet. That costs money. They have window requirements. So you layer all that on, and they're not the only ones. They also have no zoning that will allow for any type of millennial development, any type of high density. Now, I'm not saying we should be able to go into Forsyth County and go out in the middle of, you guys are 5 farmers that live out in North Forsyth and drop a bunch of density, but if you took it and you put it along 400, where everybody's getting in their car and driving up and down to go to work, put it up against 400, that solves problems, because that is what we're faced with. And I don't know how well that translates down to your area, Vance, but it's certainly, it all adds up. Everything unless we address the housing in the right places, we're going to continue to struggle. Thank you.
Questions? Questions? Anybody? Committee? What do y'all think? Well, I can say this about Council for Quality Growth. I've been going for several years, attending a lot of meetings, and I'll tell you what's unique about it. Michael Mosel will have a meeting and maybe 25 to 35 people are there, and it's kind of more or less a community meeting. We'll have people from Tucker, or we'll have Stone Mountain, Brookhaven. You can just keep naming all these communities, and when you go, you sit at a table, like I say, 25, maybe 30 people. You get a lot of one-on-one time. They meet for about an hour and 15 minutes, sometimes in the morning, sometimes at noon. They're watching what's going on in all these communities, just as Michael said. And that's interesting. I mean, I get that time to meet those people, so I thoroughly enjoy going.
Have 9 of those a month around the region.
That's right. You just pick it up, just Google them. Go on the internet, you'll see where the meetings are, and it's very interesting stuff. I appreciate y'all coming. Now, anybody, any last questions here now, y'all? I'm not going to drag this thing out, but I want to know, if you got anything, let us know. We're going to be putting out let's give these two a round. We set out, the study committee allows up to 5 meetings. We're going to have 4. So we're trying to appease the speaker, we like to keep speaking. But we're going to have 4. We're going to announce tomorrow, it should go out tomorrow, no later than Wednesday. We got a meeting coming up in Tifton, that's South Georgia, and then we're going to go to North Georgia in November, and then we're going to be back at the Capitol in December, and we'll meet in one of the conference rooms at CLOB. So we're going to continue talking about this. We'll have different panelists to come up. I know we're going to have ACCG and GMA are going to be at one panel. We're going to have the home builders at one panel. We're going to mix it all up. We're going to continue to talk about workforce housing. And so any input, I think today's been good. A lot of questions been asked, but I just appreciate everybody's attendance. Any last thoughts from the committee? Last comments? Brian's got a comment. Brian kind of runs this thing now. I have to pay attention to what Brian does. Brian, what you got?
If you presented today or you're going to present at a future meeting, please send me whatever you're going to have on the screen, and we'll get that on the website. And then it'll stay there along with the archive footage that we're taking. And hopefully we'll be able to be here for every meeting. And then any agenda or planning items will go through Kathy, and any of the information will come through me, and I'll get that. Or if there's anything that you want the chairman to have, send it to me, send it to the chairman, and we'll make sure that everybody gets a copy.
Yeah, y'all just write that phone number down up there. Michelle will call me, and we'll get it all on there. And I really appreciate Brian and Justin. Appreciate the committee members. Go ahead, Tom.
To all of y'all that's gonna be presenting, for all us old folks like Vance and me, that ain't millennials or Generation Z's or whatever it is, I really like a piece of paper I can hold in my hand instead of having to do this or look it up on some website that Ryan's gonna put on there, because I don't do that good. If it's possible.
No, that is good, because I've made notes on mine as I go along. Tom and I were talking at lunch. I told Tom, I said, somebody asked me, said, I'm a freshman, I just went back in the house. I've been there before. Somebody said, how is it compared to the first time? I said, well, the first time we didn't have these. It was wonderful. And now, we had the old Southern Link with the antenna that was up under your arm, and that's the way we work, because most people in there are working for a living. So I appreciate the dedication and time for these guys right here, the distance they had to drive. I appreciate y'all coming. Like I say, this is the first stop of 4, so thank y'all very much. And if there's no other business, y'all be glad to be here. Thank you.